Zoom is feeding over. You're going to see me turn away from you for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's when I'm going to start sharing. Don't worry, I'm with you. You have my word. There's the radio program. That would be interesting if I shared it there to see what would happen. Somehow I don't think it would go quite there. Okay. We are at 5:01. And we are there. My goodness, he's done it and he hasn't blown up any electrical equipment again. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Kennedy Effect for 26 July 2020. He's done it again. He has shared. All of you enjoy watching me share to the many, many, many Facebook pages that I get to share to. I know you all enjoy that pre-production work. Isn't that funny? You love doing it. And again, he has forgotten to turn down the volume on the iPad where he monitors from. Boy, isn't that amazing? He forgets every single week. We've only been on the air for 3 months. And yet he forgets to do it every week. Again, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Jeff Kennedy. Welcome to the program. This is the Kennedy Effect for July 26, 2020. Let's get through the nuts and bolts that we always get through at the top of every program. It is Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States. This is the Kennedy Effect for all of you watching and or listening anywhere on Facebook. We are glad you are with us. You are welcome. Your opinions are welcome and respected wherever they may fall on the political spectrum. We are just happy that you are here. Whatever Facebook page, group, fill in the blank that you may be listening or watching, we are thrilled that you are here wherever you may be. That said, it is our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, where we will see your comments and questions. If you have comments and questions for myself, for my honored guest, anytime during the program, you need to come to the home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. That is where we will see your comments and questions. Welcome, Hot101.net family. Thrilled to be with you yet again. Week 3, I believe we are on. It's become such routine. We're so happy to be with you. We slid right in. We're a big part of the family right now. Big thanks to DJ Lexus, DJ Earl, and of course my producer, partner, friend, shaman, part-time psychiatrist sometimes, April Riddick, who helped me get all of this put together. We're thrilled to be with the Hot101.net family. You can listen to Hot101.net a myriad of ways. Of course, there is the main website page, Hot101.net. That one's easy to figure out, isn't it? The .net kind of gives it away. You can listen to Hot101.net on the app. If you have an Apple device, go to the Apple App Store. You can find Hot101.net there. Have an Android an Android device, he tried to say. Go to the Google Play Store, or you can go to TuneIn, the TuneIn radio app, and find hot101.net there. Now that we are global, yes, literally global, hot101.net reaches around the planet. Do you have a business? Are you interested in advertising on the Kennedy Effect and have these dulcet tones read your advertisement? I'd be thrilled to do it. Contact us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com and you can have your ad read here. So we are thrilled to have you with us for yet another week of Inform, Educate, and Engage. That's the fancy tagline for the program. We're just thrilled to have you. So there's a really huge, important piece of news that I need to get to today. And you're all at the edge of your seats and you're thinking to yourselves, what is this monumental piece of news that he needs to announce straight at the top of the program? What could be so important that he's preempting his guest to get to this important piece of news? It's so important that he's actually lowered the tone of his voice. He's approaching a whisper. What could be this important? Well, if you are watching the program on Facebook, you would know I am in yet another Manchester United kit top. So what's that mean? In the States, we generally refer to it as a sports jersey. United has qualified for next season's Champions League. That's the big piece of news, kids. United has qualified for the Champions League. And I'm that happy about it that I'm leading the program with it. I am started off the program with the fact that Manchester United has qualified for next year's Champions League. Yep. You know you're going to sleep better tonight. Yes, you do. You know you're going to sleep better tonight. You know it. You know you are. You know you heard it here first. You probably knew it because you know how important football is. It's the beautiful game. And yes, by the way, it is football because you kick it, you play it with your feet. It's not like the NFL where you throw it, you kick it, you play it with your feet. It's a real contact sport. People run into each other. It's contact. That said, it is that important. All that's good and great in the world, Manchester United, the beautiful game, the all-time leaders in trophies and champions in England. Hey, it's all that's good and great in the world. You usually lead with something that big. So yes, finished fourth, qualified for next year's Champions League. We're not done yet. We're still in the Europa League. That has yet to shaken itself out. But yeah, we had a lead with that. That's a big deal. When we open the phone lines later in the show, I'm sure there will just be a flood of calls. And you're just going to want to talk about that tremendously. But that said, as we approach 5:10, let me get to my guest who has been beyond patient and giggling at me incessantly as I prattle on about Manchester United. I'm sure he's thrilled to listen to me just to prattle on about my football team. That said, I am honored. And we're doing, those who are here every week are familiar with the style of the program. You know what we talk about on a regular basis. You know that it is primarily a political program, one, however, that is solidly rooted in history, in education, in fact, and in science. And I'm very proud of that. We do not name call. We do not scream. We do not do things gratuitously for attention. The attention is coming. The Facebook views average around 2,000 a week. And through the graciousness and, to be honest, the guts of Hot 101 to do something completely different and to do something different away from just the music. We are here now, part of the Hot 101 family. I'm very, very proud of that. And around the globe and bringing something new to the Hot 101 audience. but in a way that we hope is a bit elevated, not just screaming and trashing and throwing things and foaming at the mouth and yelling. And when we have an opportunity to do something even different from that, we jump on it. And this week is a prime example of that. We have an opportunity to do something even different from the normal different that we do. From the normal different. Let me mull that a bit. That might not have come out the way I meant it to come out. But when we have an opportunity to do something different from what we normally do, we're going to jump on that. And this week is exactly that. We're thrilled to have our very first author with us. And an author, not just of a grocery store dime novel, but of a very important book, and one that is exceptionally timely given what we are watching happen across our nation and, to be honest, around the globe, especially following the murder of George Floyd. Now, his book is not set necessarily in that vein, but it is timely given those events nonetheless. Our guest this week is Mr. James Holley. He is the author of the book, The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, the subtitle of which is The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. And I had the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Holley on Friday, I think it was. We had what was supposed to be a 5-minute long phone conversation. If anyone knows me, 5 minutes generally means an hour. And that's pretty much what it turned into. So hopefully we didn't leave all the good stuff on the phone. But let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Holley. He was nice enough to send me some information, which is always awesome because I'm a terrible internet person. I always tend to get myself down rabbit holes, and then I drift off into other areas and start looking at, I don't know, Star Trek ship designs, or I start reading up about potential Manchester United transfer targets or something, and then I just drift off, or I buy things on Amazon that I don't need. But he was nice enough to send me some information. I'm just a human being. I'm a human being behind a mic, and that's what I do. So he was nice enough to send me some information, most of which I'm sure we will probably use. But if you're familiar with the program, you know what the first question is going to be, and we're all going to go off from there. But he was nice enough to send me some information, so let me share it with you. Mr. Holley has over 26 years of experience in corporate America, with over a decade and a half as a senior leader. James has over 10 years of experience in foundation and community development work. He is the proud father of 7 children, and considering the fact that at the most in my life, all I've ever had was a dog and 3 cats, 7 children, I can't even, that's, you know what? We'll probably talk about that too. I don't know who did more work, James. You having 7 children or your wife? I'm going to give the nod to your wife, to be honest with you.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. James has dedicated his life to inspiring people to achieve things that they themselves did not believe were possible. So I give a warm Kennedy Effect welcome to author and corporate leader, Mr. James Holley. James, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Jeff. If nothing else, I know I'm going to sleep tonight. Start things off, but I really appreciate you, the family, the Hot 101 family as well. You know, this is an awesome opportunity to just have some conversation about something that, means a lot to me.
Well, welcome to the program. We are thrilled that you are here. And I meant what I said too. This is a very this is a real different thing. You're the first author to be on the program, so thank you for that.
Honored.
And it is different. I think we get. It would be easy to continue to parade candidates in here over and over and over again, and considering the fact that we both live here, so I shouldn't say, just being by myself, but we're based in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It would be easy to parade candidate after candidate after candidate in here and talk about the fact that, the Commonwealth spends more on prisons and education and infrastructure and fracking And those are extremely important topics. I mean, they're powerfully important topics, and we could talk about the virus every single week. And that isn't obviously a very powerful topic. In fact, I'm expecting I will be having my very first COVID test this week. That should be fun. I'm desperately looking forward to having that thing probed up into my brain. It'll be interesting to see if they touch any brain or find any up there. I suspect they'll hit largely empty space. But this is an interesting departure because you didn't just write this book is not just how to succeed in corporate America, but it does encapsulate the entire to say this in one sentence it seems to me to be incredibly understated at a very minimum, but to try to take the this little topic of race and put it into this corporate world. I don't know how your book isn't like an old set of encyclopedias. I mean, how do you take I'm actually skipping my traditional first question, and I will get to it, but how do you take a topic as massive, a topic that has only 400 plus years of history on this continent, and fit it into the corporate world, which is, unless I'm wrong, which is essentially what you've done here?
Definitely. So, what I wanted to focus on was more of a modern approach to have conversations about what's going on right now. So, you talked of some of those things and hundreds of years of suffering and a lot that goes with that. But, I got to a point where I felt like if people wanted to know that information, they would already. But can we get everybody to take a look around right now and pay attention to what's going on? Can we solve for the now or find out some ways to move forward? So I looked at a lot of things that I went through in my 26 years in the corporate industry. And there were some good times too, but the lack of other Black associates makes it so lonely, in a world that, one, we're not as used to, and two, we have to see others like us so that we have the hope that we can move up the ladder and do other things. And in my 26 years, besides myself, that was the only one that I experienced. So this isn't a book to point fingers or to tell everybody that they're doing it wrong. I think a lot of it is some real honesty about things that they can do better, whether it's at the recruiting stage, the hiring stage, how we retain, the conversations that are had. It even goes into some things in regard to, things that you shouldn't say or that shouldn't be talked about in the workplace that a lot of us think it's okay to say because the one person that you said it to didn't have anybody else to tell. So each person from that meeting takes that joke to another meeting. And, a lot of it for me was having conversations with myself and questioning my manhood at times and what I put up with to take care of my family, and what that meant to me as a person. And then I started to try to see through it a little bit. But coming up, it was very easy to write it all down on paper. It was a lot of trials and tribulations over 26 years to be able to talk about. I think everybody has tough stories. We all have them growing up, one over another, regardless of creed or color, but ours can be very tough. Without success at the end of it, it just becomes another sad story. So being that I found that success, I wanted to talk through it a little bit and speak to things that we can do better, as organizations, and step away from the government reprimanded, statutes that they have or regulations that everybody uses, and someone take a step up and figure out why, when you walk out of your office, it looks the same every time you do.
Before I get to the next book question, I did actually skip, as I said, I skipped my traditional very first question. So let me backtrack quickly. Who is James Holley? How did you get here?
James Holley is a guy that, when you talk about tougher places in the area here in Allentown and so on, I've seen a lot of things that a lot of people haven't seen. A lot of people have seen. I've spoken about those things. I've tried to, mold myself with what I've learned, and even in the toughest situations, find something that I can work on me with. The biggest part of finding that is realizing that there are opportunities, but they are very slight. So the knucklehead stories as a teenager that everybody else has, this guy that was mad at everybody to the point where I would sit in a corner, I'd stand in a corner of the hall at school and wouldn't speak to folks, all day long. There was just this anger about, walking down the street or just sitting on the porch and knowing if it was more than a half hour or so, somebody was going to pull up. I became the guy that wanted to play robbers instead of the cops. So, some of what's going on now, we didn't experience then, but when your teachers tell you all the time, based on what they understand about your culture, that this is the level of where you may get to, or, you're not going to be able to accomplish these things, or you're going to end up, where you started. You continue to hear those things and you start to listen to them. So I became a guy without a voice. I didn't speak up when I felt like I should because it didn't seem to matter. I didn't say things that were on my mind because nobody paid attention. And nobody ever asked me for the answers. So, in doing that, I started to pay attention to other things around me instead of what just looked bad. I started to try to learn from those who I hid from or that I didn't want to be around because of the uncomfortability. And I got to the point where, I had some children very early in high school, and that gave everybody even more of a reason to say you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. So, as wild as it could be, I got, 1C all the way through 10th grade. But every conversation I had with a teacher based on how I reacted to certain things was that I still wasn't going to be able to do anything. So that became less interesting to me. That, then it became about finding something and building a foundation. And I wanted to find a platform so that I could motivate and inspire people. So after a long 10, 11 years on the phones, I was able to move into a management role. And you still see a lot of times where people are passing you that probably shouldn't. That even the statistics that say that it should be you. You have to get to a point where you stop thinking about those things. And if it was because I thought I was, if it was because they thought I was Black, or that was the reason that they didn't want to give me the opportunity, they couldn't say that out loud. So I worked on everything else that I could to put myself in a situation that as people passed me, I took a group of every color and creed that there could be and get them together every day to celebrate each other in a way that says, leading with love is always going, and passion is always going to overcome those in between things. But if you let everything, if you carry everything into everything that you do and you don't find some sort of solace, it can change who you are as a person. I allowed that to inspire to me a different person.
So was there a point then in high school where, is there a single point in high school where you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, I'm better than this? Something's off the rails here? Or because you mentioned that you had children early. So do you literally wake up one morning and say to yourself, James, this isn't going right. You got a choice to make here. You're on the top of the roof of the house. You can fall off the roof this way, or you can go, or you're on the fence, let's say. You can fall off into the snake pit, or you can climb down safely. Is there a moment, or does one decent thing happen, which then branches off into several other good things, or is there just one particular moment, or is there, how does that, am I on to something there? I see a smile. Am I on to something there? Is there one, does one teacher give you, take, or guidance counselor or something, take you aside and say, James, you're better than this, and give you the shake and say, you don't let yourself be the next,
Yes.
whatever, fill in the blank there, of where instead of, one child, there's 10, or you do this bad thing which turns into 10 more, or don't get into the prison pipeline, or don't, I don't want to give you, I sound like I'm giving you the answer to your question, but you understand what I'm saying. What is it one thing, do you literally wake up one morning and look in a mirror and go, come on, I'm better than this, I can do better than this? Or is it a series of, do several small good things happen that branch into something that makes you have that epiphany?
I think, there's been a few times where there was people I really respected that would look at me and say, what are you doing? Friends of mine would laugh because we go into school and I would go to honors classes, and they would go to the others, and we would still meet up afterwards and do whatever we needed to do. There was a guy, Mr. Edwards, that worked at Private Industry Council, which was a place where you could go and get summer employment as a younger guy. And he really did grab a hold of me and said, what do you want to do with yourself? And the fact that I know you don't have that answer right now, I'm expecting one. So I really want you to sit down and think about it. He was one that really made an impact on me. And beyond that, it was my mother. Single mother growing up, again, very tough upbringing, very poor, conditions. Again, all of the stories that a lot of people have, and a lot worse than me. But she was a single white woman raising 2 Black children in an area that wasn't used to that. And there was no other area that really wanted us there either. So.
And where is that? Where was that?
Center City, Allentown, around 7th Street, 7th and Jewish. So, I could tell by her looks. And, I made a point at one point to say, everything that I'm going to do moving forward is going to be to honor my mother based on everything she went through and how hard she worked to give us opportunities. And to your point earlier, I had 2 little girls going into 12th grade, and I had to figure something out. So I think the first time I had to take one of them to daycare and then try to get to homeroom, that was my eye-opening day in regard to how I lived life, how I interacted with women. It changed everything for me, because there was something there that was worth every inch of what I could do moving forward, and every reason to live moving forward.
It's interesting it's interesting the way you put that. So you mentioned Mr. Edwards and you mentioned your mom, but yet at the end of the day, these 2 separate people still put it all back on you.
Right.
They still put it back on you. They said to you, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but for the sake of argument, they still put it back on you and said, no, James, you have to decide.
That is correct.
What are you going to do? What are you going to be? What are you going to do?
Right. And nobody wants to hear that when they're young. They think it's okay not to know. But when you're young and you're challenged with opportunities, and that window is very tight based on who you see succeed or make it out of where you come from, you have to be prepared when those opportunities come. And you have to start thinking earlier about what difference you're going to make that maybe others didn't. And I'm not saying it was because they didn't have the opportunities. I'm saying because they didn't understand that window. And instead of, even at work, instead of being in those offices and trying to figure out why I was the only Black man, I started paying attention to the people that were in that office. I started to grow and learn, and went back to school and got my degree, and all the things that I needed to do to put myself in a place to compete. And winning or losing, whatever that means based on what your title is, it gave me an opportunity to work with other people and do everything differently than most of the ones that I worked for. So those girls, and the funny thing is, to this day, I tell my girls, you saved my life. I say that to them all the time, and we've never had a complete conversation of why, but I tell them all the time, because it gave me something to realize that, I was responsible for. And growing up without a father, obviously that became very important to me. Again, somebody telling me you're very young, you're not going to be a good father was very important to me. And, I'm 48 and my daughter's 30 and I just got to walk her down the aisle, recently. So I gave up things like the prom and going to hang out at the park after school and things of that sort. But becoming a man early also helps you realize where you want to be later in life. And if I wouldn't have done that as early as I would have, there's a good chance we might not be having this conversation.
Well, again, without trying to be cliche, and I think it might be easy to be cliche in some of these discussions because sadly, that's kind of a hard thing to say. It's almost maybe judgmental now that I think about it, and that's not my intention. Um, but your story is not uncommon, sadly. But when you wake up in the morning and you are trying to take your girls where they needed to go so you could make it to homeroom, like you said, to borrow your words, that delivers a focus to you, doesn't it? I mean, without trying to put words in your mouth, you're the author. You obviously have the words to share, but doesn't that give you a focus? If I may be so bold as to put some words on you, that
Without a doubt, because
you
now
look down and there's your responsibility. I've got this. I have to break the cycle.
I love the commercial that comes on sometimes where they walk in the room and say, Dad's going to take a day off. And that's when you realize, the year before they couldn't get me to homeroom. I could be at school already and I still didn't want to go homeroom. Now I had to know what needed to be done before I could even prepare for myself. Someone actually needs me to get them together and safe before I figure out what I'm going to do, which means I need to be safe in the process of doing that.
And that's where the term "they saving you" comes in.
That's right.
Because the focus that they bring to you, you can then turn on yourself to bring yourself up.
Yes. When you grow up and things are really hard, you have to find things to outweigh, and it's tough to do. I know what's faced, and I know that it's not taken serious enough. And I wish I could say, well, if I did it, everybody can. And I know that my story starts with my feet in the mud, at the bottom of where you can be. But I've seen so much in that process that it's hard for me to say if I did it, anyone else can, because if that was the case, then more would have had opportunities. And I am the same guy now, heartfelt, that I was 20 years ago. I just didn't have direction. But I am that same guy. So if they would give more opportunities to people, I think they could unleash their passion about what goes on and really add value to the business that they don't understand, because we're always looking for something specific. We're always looking for someone specific, but everybody's tried that forever and it's not working. So attrition is out of the roof, and we start to accept 4-5%. Well, if you already only have 3 to 4% of African Americans in your organization, we're also going to be a part of that attrition that's lost as well. And some of that is based on what's expected when we walk in and what we are not tooled with, the same as others are. So there is a lot of that comes into play. And I never asked why, because I was the only one. And that's the truth. I wondered why. I looked around a lot. I got surprised at some visits thinking, but they were partnerships and things of that sort. But you just can't ask. And as much as they want to regulate and retaliation policies and things that everybody wants to talk through, yeah, they're laminated. But again, it's a very dark place when you're the only person in that room hoping that someone else steps up for you and understands that what happened was wrong, instead of giggling at it because the chorus of the room was in that mode.
We're actually at the bottom of the first hour already, if you can believe that or not. The joy of Champions League has me so in such a euphoria that time is
Fired up from the
I'm
kickoff.
so fired up. Time is flying by. I'm gonna poor James is like, I'm talking about a book, man, and he's swimming in Champions
Fun here. That's it.
I
Conversation.
told you it was going to be a relaxed conversation. We're just having a conversation. It is bottom of the first hour here on the East Coast of the United States for all our Hot 101 family listeners around the planet. Bottom of the first hour here on the East Coast of the United States in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania on this in these United States on the third rock from the sun, this planet Earth, the only one that we have. My guest is the Honorable, and I'm very thrilled to have him, James Holley, author of The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, the real corporate journey of a Black leader. You can get James's book, by the way, is available now on, you're going to have to help me pronounce this because I played with this all day long. You were kind enough to send it to me.
It is on Barnes and Nobles and Amazon now.
Oh, it is? Okay, because you sent me this, and I'm looking at this.
Debris is my publisher, and until I okayed the press release, they didn't release anything to the others. But a few people posted something yesterday that got it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
It's the X Libris.
So it's like Libris with the X in front, Zebra.
Right. Okay, I was thinking it was Zeblers, but I wasn't sure. And then I was like, oh man, I'm gonna butcher that up. Something awful, but it is available on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. If you Google the title or Google James's name, you will find it. It is available everywhere that you would normally find books. Get it, regardless if you are of African American descent or whatever you are. If you are white, if you are of Asian descent, if you are purple, if you are from Mars or Venus, get it, because it is illuminating on a human level. I have had, if you're a regular viewer, listener of the program, you know I have had folks here of African American descent before, and we have talked about how we are all, at the end of the day, human beings, and we all want the same things. And those things are very, very simple. We all bleed red at the end of the day. We have families and we want the very, very same things. And those things are very simple. We'd like to be safe. We would, look, I'd like to hit a big, huge lottery like most people. I've always wanted an Aston Martin. I'd like season tickets to Manchester United. I'd like to be able to fly across the pond and see them play. Things like that. I have toys I'd like, but generally speaking, I'd like enough money that if I get in trouble or if I get sick, I can take care of myself. If the roof of the house collapses, I can fix it. If the Jeep kicks the bucket, I can get it either fixed or get something new. I'd like the kids to be safe. I'd like to, decent schools. I'd like the roads to be paved, things like that. Regardless of what your heritage, where your ancestors descend from, what your outer skin looks like, the amount of melanin in your skin. And that is the only difference that we're talking about here, kids.
Sure.
We want the same things. So regardless of what your heritage may be, this is an important and very illuminating book. I highly, highly recommend that you pick it up.
And Jeff, I'll just say, it's 130 pages. It wasn't wired with everything you could possibly think of that goes, but I wanted to tell it in a way where I wasn't yelling. I did all my yelling 20, 30 years ago. I don't have it in me anymore. So I wanted to portray it in a way where people didn't feel like they were being pointed the finger at, because the real scenario there is they don't know. I have worked with some of the greatest people that I've ever met in my life, and they are white. They've taught me a lot of things. Some of them I've taught a lot of things. We have great relationships, kids' parties, whatever it may be. Well, grandkids for me, kids for them. They're a bit younger.
Right.
But they, just in conversation about the book, some of them have said, you know what? I see where you're coming from now. And that was what I wanted. I wanted people to feel okay about reading it. I didn't want it to be a very sad story that made people feel bad for me, but started to understand what their coworkers felt a little bit more. And to your point earlier, that division at times includes other ethnicities as well. But when you don't see more of who you are, your culture is lost. How you sound is lost. So I even go into some of that so that our culture is understood a little bit more. The way we dress, the way we pronunciate, we joked about that. Every word is rooted from somewhere else anyway. So is anyone really saying it correct? But it's those simple things where you peel back what you think you know. Take a look at these guys in an interview. See where they've been. See the passion behind what they want in life and how hard they're willing to work if you just give them a chance.
I
That's,
just
that is the key. So it really is open. It opens up conversation. It helps people understand, what they can do, not why it's their fault. Because that's what's not helping right now. Yelling back and forth is not going to get the conversation going that we as people need to have so that everyone feels comfortable about what we can do as individuals and as a united group moving forward. But it opens eyes. It allows you to think about things that you might have heard before and why maybe you should react differently to it. But a big part of it is think about walking into a business, even for an interview, and looking around as you walk through and seeing nothing that looks like you and wondering what, even if you do get the job, your plight is in that business.
I'm wondering if I can take you off on a little bit of a rabbit hole here, because you were talking about Central Allentown. What high school did you attend?
Alan Indira.
As someone who still lives in the valley and seeing the genuinely dire condition that the Allentown School District is in, what do you make of it?
I think, just like anyone else, we are finding, ways to, put these kids that are struggling a little bit more, whatever that may be, into silos, which sets them back even more. I think that we need to really have some conversations. I've gone to these board meetings. I actually was treasurer for the Bethlehem Area Foundation for about 5 years. So I didn't get any invites in Allentown, unfortunately, but Bethlehem, we did some work with them and the
Well,
director.
Allentown is missing the boat. Let me tell you that. They're obviously missing the boat. They've
So
invited.
I'm not
There's at
sure.
least one more voice who should be invited into the room. I can tell, but whoever's listening from Allentown, and if you see this on the recording, then there's one more voice that needs to be invited into the room. Your district is a shambles.
We have to figure out what we're really trying to accomplish because they're not going to do it on their own. We have to figure out what we really need as people. And again, this is a group. And, we have to find ways that if our voice comes together on things like schooling for our children, then it can get better for everyone. Because we have to look at what's in front of us and realize that everything cannot change. So if everybody is screaming for different things, it becomes a lot of noise. If we figure out what we want, maybe we can put them on the road to, spending these few dollars that they supposedly have in a way that's going to make more sense for our youth and their education.
Are you of the general agreement that it is education where it all starts, that education is the great equalizer?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And again, I understand the pressure that's on these teachers and so on. For me, racism is something I've always understood. We had a conversation, being half white and black, my grandmother, would park 2 blocks away to be able to visit us. So I understand that part of it. And I want to understand that people to understand that as I wrote this book as well, which is why I could do it in the calm manner that I did. But when we don't see, again, people that believe in us or, a system that puts us in position to do some of these other things that others are, we're having college conversations with, the counselors, and it's about the community college up the street. Why is that always the conversation when that occurs? So for me, it's very split based on where I see the drop off and what I see happening in our town and our youth and how bad it's been and how much less they have to do every day or focus on. There's a lot.
By accident, by the way.
Yeah.
Not by accident.
Right.
We have as much time as you are willing to sit here, and I want to open up the phone line later in the show if James is willing to stay, and we will take your calls if somebody is finally willing to dial the bloody phone. But that said, and I'm not trying to drag you into if this is not something you're comfortable talking about, we don't have to go there. But it seems to me that as we move forward and as we move along in this conversation, and I'm trying to move in somewhat of a linear time sort of discussion, that if the education wasn't there for you, and it's a two-way street, if you hadn't taken advantage of it, we wouldn't be talking, you and I, you would not have written this book. So as someone who has been through it, and as you still live here, and as you are still involved in it, as I assume you still have children in the school district,
Sure.
that you would have, an informed opinion on it. And as the third largest municipality in our Commonwealth, and as someone who is, just wink, wink, slightly involved in politics myself, I believe what has been done and is being done to the Allentown School District is nothing short of criminal. It is being done intentionally. The Allentown School District is being starved of funding, and it is being done intentionally. I happen to reside in the Saucon Valley School District, perennially one of the 50 best districts in the Commonwealth. When the schools were closed and students were sent home to learn, first off, on the very first day of the 2019-2020 school year, here's your tablet, kids. Here's your tablet. Everybody gets one. In Allentown, they were sharing books. Old ones. Outdated ones.
That they never bring home.
Right.
Can't even do that.
Couldn't afford to lose yet another one. Let alone, how do you send someone home with a book when you're already sharing it? So folks, if you're wherever you're watching or listening, how does the third largest city in the state produce more James Holleys when 2, 3, or more students are sharing a book? Now the virus hits. And yes, whatever conspiratorial website you may happen across, kids are getting it. Now what do we do? Now what happens? We have to find a way to continue to educate them. This is a responsibility, a governmental responsibility. This is something we all pay into and share. Now what? The district was forced to suddenly figure out what to do. They had to make an emergency purchase because little or no planning seemed to go into it ahead of time. To be fair, could they have anticipated a pandemic? No. I don't think it would be fair to put that burden on them. So they did eventually sort it, as we say. As us old, translucent Irish folks say, they sorted it. And they're going to have to continue to sort it going into this fall, in all likelihood.
It just seems...
And one of the great hypocrisies of our friends on the right is we have to get everybody back to school. We've got to get them back into the school building. These schools must reopen. We don't want to fund any of it, by the way. We don't want to pay for it. That's socialism. By the way, yes, it is. Anything that large sums of people put their collective money into to pay for is by definition socialistic. It's democratic socialism. Your roads, water systems, electrical systems, your schools, your libraries. The list could go on. The military, because we all love it, largest socialistic institution on the planet, period, end of story. All that said, this is a very long-winded question for James. You live there. You're still involved in it. You have children in the system. How do we get... I'm dragging you into a topic that you may not want to get into, and you're welcome to tell me, I don't want to discuss this. How do we get more James Holleys, plural, in the future if we don't, because we've already agreed, education's the great equalizer. Regardless of the systems, the homes, the generational inadequacies or economic distresses that you come from, education's the equalizer.
Right.
If we don't do that, if the third largest city doesn't get the attention it deserves because its state level leadership has failed it, its Harrisburg level leadership has failed it, period. It is missing in action. Congresswoman Wild got it $10 million when it needed it desperately. That's what it used to get the tablets. But its state level leadership is absolutely missing in action. That said, how do we get more folks like you if we don't fix this system? You have given credit to your high school and your high school education. You took advantage of it, but it was there for you. What do the folks behind you, younger than you, the generations behind us, what do they do?
I think we have to start to prepare ourselves outside of what they're offering. I mean,
What does that mean?
When I talk big, I understand that the message isn't getting to where it needs to in the political plan to where we're going to, but the problem right now is, there's no excitement around education because it doesn't seem to matter the way it did. You want to blame the teachers. It's impossible. I've met some great teachers that take it beyond where they should. I've met some administrators that love what they do and get very involved, even, in the Bethlehem area with some of those schools and being a part of that process. The biggest part is, what do we have to put down to be able to get what we need to measure up to some of these, even within miles of us? Because what's happening right now is what I saw a lot in education earlier, where the schooling was different a little bit based on white or black, and you just didn't expect to be as educated. That worries me in this process as well, because if we don't have what we need to educate these children the way we need to, we're going to be stuck in a mold of what's next for them. And even that next level, I think you have to get more from it than they give you. I've done that in my professional career. I did it in school. I don't think I was educated better than most. In fact, I was told at times that I wouldn't be able to do anything with how well I did. But I read other books that were similar to what we were doing. I got to this point where it drove me crazy, not to think or do 3 different things at once. So even with the books, this started as a process of like a trilogy. And I really pushed forward on this one because of the timing a little bit. But when I have a conversation with somebody and I don't like the way it's delivered and they may be yelling a little bit or whatever that may be, I still find something there that I can work on. And I don't know if as people at times, we're open enough to listen to things about ourselves. So part of how I start my day is looking in the mirror and being honest about how I'm going to become a better man every day. Father, leader, granddad, whatever it may be. But that's the pressure I put on myself. I expect the best from everyone else too. But what I see that we have in these teachers and what they're willing to do with these students isn't the problem. And usually that's the core of the problem, the students and the teachers. This is a problem that nobody really wants to talk about out loud or tell the truth about. It's a problem where funds are disassociated or they should be in other places, and you don't want to admit it because no other schools do. The problem is they're making extra moves to do what they do. In the Bethlehem area, they're going to these schools, they're talking to the teachers, even the foundation members, to find out what they need to keep these kids excited. Even with the funds that we're able to generate, it's still not near what's necessary.
Think about the interesting differences that you're talking about there between two municipalities that literally border each other, and one municipality that straddles two counties that border each other, that make up the greater Lehigh Valley. For those listening around the world who may not know the geography of what we're talking about, I mean, you're literally talking about two municipalities, the third largest and the eighth largest in the state, and they literally share a border. They touch each other. And Bethlehem, by the way, that happens to straddle both have a piece in Lehigh and the majority of it in Northampton counties. And the inadequacies, but the inequality and the it's just, it boggles the mind. I've been involved in politics since I came out of the womb and before the doctor cut the cord. And the Allentown School District is one of those anomalies that just absolutely fascinates me, and for no good reasons, by the way, but it fascinates me that it does. The massive dysfunctionality of it is fascinating to me.
It's been frustrating. I have my last guy, he's a senior this year, but all my other 6 have graduated, so luckily I'm winding on down here, but the process starts again, right? I have grandkids.
You'll have grandkids, right? And it continues.
Everybody's worried about where they live and finding other places so that they can get these other out. Why are you allowing that's talent in our area that at some point can come back to our area and flourish? And
that needs to do so. Yes. That's how communities continue to thrive or grow or flourish or change for the better, generation to generation to generation. Yes. Or if they
so many PPL buildings,
right? Know? Well,
we got to do better than just that. It's not going to do it. And we have the ability. Everybody, I understand, just like when you go to college, you're looking for that top-notch college, because when it's part of my, again, my explanation in the book. Well, even if, you do go to college, can you afford that type of a degree? And does that really lose the game for you? Because, there's been a lot of times where people could stack their degrees on top of books, and I still felt like I was the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
So it's so hard to see that these kids and these teachers and some of the administrators really want, they are proud of their school and what they want to accomplish, and if they can, but when they don't, we like to point the fingers back at them and not at what's going on throughout these 12 years of high school. 12 years of school, into what they turned into or what options were available to them. And if we start to own that part or pay more attention to it, maybe voices will be heard. But I know the right things are being asked for in meetings that I've attended, but it seems like very menial without even feeling like it can get that. So we're trying to band-aid things that at some point are just going to fall apart altogether. And this is about our kids and our youth at the end of the day. So if it falls apart, we don't want ours to.
And the words don't pay for it.
Yes, sir.
The gestures don't pay for it. And the first place we look tends to be the teachers and the students, but the problems and the inadequacies and the inequalities go infinitely deeper than that. Indeed. That's the first place we always go. We head straight to the teachers, and then to the students. But this goes way deeper than that. Let's stop beating up on those two groups to start with.
Indeed.
Go to a primary school, go to an elementary school, and if you think that group of K through 5, if they're the first group that you want to beat up on for what's wrong in that district, something's wrong with you. And the teachers that are plowing significant percentages of their inadequate salaries back into their own classrooms, if that's the place that you think is missing, we're on a different scale. We're on a different scale here. And again, we're not talking about some village out in the middle of the ruralty of the Commonwealth. We're talking about the third largest city in the state.
And with all
Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Allentown. We're talking about the third largest city in the state.
we've done some building and done some things that are drawing in. So if they still can't get any more, why? If we're doing all of this and there's no money left for schools, that somebody's got to open those books up and take a look or have a real conversation, because
that gets in. We know that gets into the neighborhood improvement zone and whatever taxes that are being not paid there, because we gave that away to build these buildings. That's profit.
Things do not happen, but no reasons why they shouldn't,
Right.
or what we're going to do to make sure that they do. It's just like every conversation we have, and I walk slight on this, but tragedies happen so that we get people to open their eyes and have conversations, when if we just talk to each other every day, it wouldn't cause that. For for people to talk regularly, get to learn about each other. It doesn't have to be tragedy first to say, you know what, that wasn't right, knowing that a lot of other things weren't. It's about educating yourself and understanding what you want, or more than that, once your kids get older, what they want to accomplish, and continuing to have those conversations. Because to your point, I don't know if education, the way it is right now, is going to keep drawing children to college afterwards. I worry about that part more than anything, although I fall 50-50 with the extra schooling. I've seen it work tremendously for people. I've seen others blast through with a 2-year associates, with the right understanding and knowledge and experience, but you still have to put yourself in a position where you can be accepted. And if you can't even get that part done, we have to wonder why we keep blaming the children or the teachers for it, and we're not bold enough to take those steps to where we really need to be. And that might be Harrisburg at the Capitol.
Well, if you enter that additional schooling already behind the 8 ball, where that additional schooling is making up for what you didn't accomplish, or didn't get taught, or didn't learn, or didn't, to fill in the blank in your first 12 years.
Can they catch up? And
right.
And those to, based on the way the system is right now,
those 2 years are done.
Right.
Those 2 years of community college are lost because you were really doing nothing other than learn what you were supposed to have learned in high school, and you left it for those community professors to teach you what you should have been taught in high school. And then now you just paid for 2 years of what was essentially high school. But that, I know I drug you down, a rabbit hole here, but the reason I wanted to ask you about that is you obviously made the most of your schooling. I mean, you wouldn't be here, I don't think, if you hadn't had the teachers to teach you, if you hadn't had the education. You obviously took advantage of it yourself. You had to do your part. Mm-hmm. It's a 50-50 split, but you also had to have those educators in front of you that cared and that put something into it for you to take. Yes. And that's why I wanted to ask you about it. And because you still live here. So it's, this elephant's in the room. It's right there.
I think, with me, my kids, I some of them have taken advantage of what's next. Some of them started their own businesses. Whatever it is that they really felt passionate about was the drive that we had, because you don't want to send another kid to school for 4 more years that didn't want to be there for the first 12. That could be disastrous as well. But I pushed them in directions to learn other things and get very interested in things closer to graduation, so that they kept the focus that was necessary. I don't think that their education dwindled any more than anyone else's, but I do understand internally what's missing and what they're just not going to get if we don't start making some of the moves that we need to. And it's in everything that we do. And people do point, poke, and laugh at our school district because they don't feel like we can compete. And in dollars and cents, I think there is money there to do more with. I just think it's a little bit prettier if it's just sitting there and it's available.
1 hour in the books already. This is the Kennedy Effect for July 26, 2020. My honored guest is, well, he's not honored for being here. I'm honored for having him, is author James Holley. He is author of the new book, The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. The book is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere you can get books. Little nuts and bolts. I have put the phone number on the screen. If you are watching anywhere on Facebook, the show phone number is there. You can dial in at any time. We will take your calls. I'm putting James on the spot. We're doing something a little different. We're going to put the phone number up early because when I put the phone number up after the guest goes, I still don't get any phone calls. You folks know, phone in, actual, real Tom Hartman type political call-in talk show means people call the number. It's an amazing bit of technology. You pick up these lovely things and you touch them and you can talk to people on the other end. It's a tremendous piece of technology. But I'm putting the number up early in the hopes that we will stimulate some call-ins. For our good friends at the hot101.net family, if you are listening by audio only, the show phone number is 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. Author James Holley is my guest. Anywhere that you are watching on Facebook, we are thrilled that you are with us. Anywhere that you fall on the political scale, you are honored to be here. We are honored that you are here and your opinion is welcomed and respected. If you want to join in the Facebook chat and comments, I need you to go to our show's home group Facebook page, which is That Other Side of Information. That's where I will see your comments and questions. If you prefer to send them that way and you don't feel like calling into the show, this is where I will see them. That Other Side of Information. Our hot101.net family, welcome. We're thrilled that you're listening. You can listen to hot101.net on the main website at, you guessed it, hot101.net. If you do not have the hot101.net app, you can get it by going to the Apple App Store. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store, or you can listen through the TuneIn radio app. Just go to TuneIn and look for hot101.net. If you are interested in advertising on the Kennedy Effect, you can do so. Let's talk about it. Just drop me an email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. And again, the Black Handbook for Corporate White America is the book. James Holley is the author, and you can get his book anywhere that you get books. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all of anywherever else that you choose to get your books. James, who is this book written for? Because when we talked about the book, I talked to all of my guests prior to the show so that we can get a feel for each other, and I can, have the ability to talk to them about how the show goes, and we do a little nuts and bolts and get everything ready and all that fun stuff. But I assume it's for really both sides of the coin. It's for the corporations themselves, for folks like you as you entered the corporate world. Is it for both sides of the coin?
Yes, sir. So, a lot of the focus is there's notes to executives that talks a little bit about sight unseen or paying more attention to what is going on. Talks to HR, recruiters, those who do interviews, how to look away from the resume a little bit, pay attention to the person, especially based on the limits of what they want you to have before you walk in the door, which decredits a lot of people that would want that position at the end of the day. Talks about coaching in general and how you can make it more personable, regardless of what color you are, but the struggle that may happen a little bit more with Black associates based on their education prowess and how they got to the point where they are at that point in time. But there's also tips for, Black associates that are trying to get a job and how to get them to pay more attention to, the canvas at the end of the day, instead of looking at the resume the whole time. How passion overcomes, lacks in there and thereof with education or experience that may be looked for in that field. So it starts from, getting rest the night before, to how to approach the day, to the conversation that they're going to have, but really helps them feel more confident about entering a corporation and feeling like they have a chance to be a part of it.
Do we know what the real numbers are as far as what Black applicants are facing compared to white applicants? You're a corporate leader. You have a team of folks that work for you in your current position. And this is not just a hypothetical situation. James is a corporate leader. He has a group of folks that work for him. 2 applicants come in front of you. One is Black and one is white. Do we know the numbers of what that Black applicant is facing compared to that white applicant, in generally speaking, in corporate America, as far as what the percentages of what each is facing as far as the percentage chance of them being hired?
I think the parameters that I looked at, and I didn't quote a lot of that stuff in the book because I wanted people to keep an open mind about it, but I think it said it was about a 30% difference, which is hard for me to believe, or just skewed by the fact that there are a lot more white applicants probably. I think the problem is how many of us do not even fill out the application or get an interview because there's 2 or 3 years of education needed, 3 or 4 or 5 years within the industry that you're in. So that's my, worry about how skewed that number is, because if you're looking at these ads online, you're crossing them off as you go. If it's about education and experience, you could go through 10 or 11 before some feel like they even have an opportunity. So if you include that portion, it could be a huge difference.
Do you see the my company is, let me back up. Let me put a little more, let me color inside the lines here a little more. No pun intended. Let me color inside the lines here a little more. I don't expect my company to survive this virus. I believe we may very well be done as a company. So much job hunting is done purely electronically. And I have been reduced to a document, an attached document on what might be a longer form, or if I'm lucky, of an email. I happen to personally believe, although I am openly and admitting right here, I do not have solid proof. I do not have scientific proof. I have a mountain of circumstantial evidence that supplemental questions that I am asked on the application process to ask me how many years of experience I have, which then gives away my age, is disqualifying me straight out of hand. Mm-hmm. Especially when I say I'm willing to take significantly less money than the job is offering. Oh, this job pays $75,000. What kind of salary are you looking for? $25,000. But I'm dismissed out of hand. I happen to believe it's because of my age. So if we add then on top of all of these other parameters, I'm asking you, I guess, to speculate a bit, and you are welcome to not speculate if you're not comfortable doing it. If we add on to all of these other parameters that we've reduced people to an attached document or a series of questions, mm-hmm. the additional parameter of color, or perhaps the assumption of color, do we have any idea, or do you have any idea, someone who's hired and sadly probably fired in your career, that additional weight, perhaps is the right word. Do you have any circumstantial or ethereal idea of what that is doing to Black corporate candidates in their application process or their attempts to move through corporate America? It's a lengthy question. It's not an easy question. I know I'm asking you to speculate, but
I think with age just becomes, it becomes more of a concern because you already feel like there are limited options or limited opportunities. So, you get into this mindset of again, hoping that you get lucky, and I feel for, again, everyone that gets
even if age is taken out of it, if I see 2 electronic applications and one of them is James O'Callahan and one is James Washington,
Gotcha.
do you have any way, did your research for this book or your experience, your corporate experience, tell you just how much more, if all I have is black and white on a screen, again, not to use a double entendre, but when I have black and white on a screen, when all I have is electronic data in front of me as a hiring person, how much more weight, how much more, not physical weight, but like ethereal weight. I know I'm burying myself in words, but I think you understand what I'm trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
How many more hurdles James Washington has in front of him than James O'Callahan might have in front of him?
Well, the carefulness of walking in and hoping in that process that you don't feel like you're competing for that reason, which I say that because most do, right? It's what defeats us at times without even really defeating us.
Are you talking about walking in with the chip on your shoulder already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what I've always said is, I think that interviews should be done the way The Voice does their show and figures out what contestants are on. They can't see them. They don't know what they look like. All they're doing is having a conversation, and take the passion from that conversation and what you think they can do moving forward. And then tell me who you would choose out of that group. Because if we blind ourselves right away, to my point about walking in, even if you walk in for the interview and see no one like you, and once that starts to group in your mind, you start to feel like it's okay to say, well, I wouldn't have got it anyway. I wouldn't have got that one anyway. And at some point you have to say, whoever's in that room, I don't care who it is or what color they are, this is what I want. This is what I'm passionate about. And that's the way I'm going to come off in that conversation. I think too many of us run from it because it's different than what we're used to. And you know how that can be. It's like tasting something if you've never tried it.
Are you literally talking about the self-fulfilling prophecy? If you, James, I want to use you specifically as you're going in to interview, for the sake of example for this question, the position that you currently hold.
Right.
There's 10 folks in the room. You are the only person of color. You're talking about the self-fulfilling prophecy of, I'm never getting this. I'm not going to get this.
Yeah. Listen,
and that starts to feed in here. I'm being a lot more visual today, I realize, than I normally am. I always describe this as a radio program. I'm being exceptionally visual with James today. I have no idea why. But you're starting to build into your head, I'm not getting this.
Yeah.
And then that starts to feed, not necessarily, I don't want to say necessarily into an anger, but just a bit of a chip. Yes. And then that starts to build, and then you start to get your spine up just a tiny bit. And then you might walk in, and then that first question might be, how are you today? And you are guns are blazing. Before the first question might be very innocuous and very simple, but you're going for the throat the minute. Right. And all the first question was how are you? Right, how was your commute here today? And you're out. Guns are blazing. Mm-hmm. That what you're, without trying to put words in your mouth, is that what you're talking about? That you have yourself psyched out before you even start?
Yes. Oh yeah. But part of that is because now I've been in those rooms for a while. I didn't walk into them for I spent 11 years on the phone. I have people that have been on the phone for 2 years, 3 years and become managers, but 11 years. And one would go by and I think, well, why shouldn't I feel like I'm ready for that? Maybe I shouldn't shake the tree at all. Okay, well, now it's starting to sting a little bit because I know I was better than those three. Well, I got 6 kids that I'm trying to raise, and most of the people I grew up with are still struggling, and some of them not because they didn't put the effort in to move forward. So you have this, even when you're a part of an organization and you want to move up, there's this, should I say too much because then I become more visible? And because I'm invisible in this organization, my voice might be taken the wrong way. The extra that I give might not be taken as passion, it might be seen as aggression. So I had to manipulate myself through, and navigate through these waters of corporate America to figure out what I could do, not just to make people feel more comfortable around me. I'm a 6'4" guy, I'm a big fella, bald head, so, can I be as passionate as I usually am, or should I question that? So these are the things that I went back and forth with over 26, well, over the last few, I've found my voice. If I walk into a room now, whether you like it or not, you're going to hear it because I've earned the right to do that. And I believe I have at this point, but I've always been a very confident person. But you made a great point. And the bad part is that's not just trying to enter an organization, it's being a part of one. And if you're there 10 years and you don't see someone that's a Black manager, you don't think that it's something that's supposed to happen for you.
There's a safety in silence.
Yes. Will I go back to where I came from and struggle as bad as I did? So you're circumventing these thoughts and you start to question who you are as well. And then you realize that there is a lot to gain. I made a lot of friends in corporate white America, people that were very good to me. I've gone on trips and seen the world with my wife. But what I've seen and being the only guy there, the pressure that puts on you when things like George, the stuff with George being happening over the last few weeks, and people becoming more of a voice, it puts more pressure as you as one of those only guys to have your own voice, or what can we do, or what can you say? And you still don't really know, even at a senior level, what is okay and what isn't. So I decided it was time to, I came into my own as a senior leader. I've done some great things with a lot of different businesses. But if I wait forever to tell my story, then most people are going to have that same story to tell.
When you are coaching, because I think you can coach, I think the term coaching, we tend to think of the coach being sort of over the players, but I think you can coach up as well. Who do you find when you are coaching, who do you find gives you the, I never thought of that response more? The folks that are above you or below you, for the lack of a better term? I hate to kind of use the word below you, but you understand what I'm saying.
I would say they're good listeners above, but below. And I think
More.
for me, that's been the impact as well, right? I lead up because I know what they want already, but I set my expectations and I tried to build a foundation that was different so it could be, the success could be sustainable, not just here and there. And you got guys that root more for, their peer than they do for themselves sometimes. So I stopped worrying about when I could get here or how long it was going to take me to move up even higher. And
So you're not finding executives higher than yourself who are taking the points you're giving them and saying and having any self-realization of, wow, I never saw that through those eyes, never saw that point, never heard that point of view, never considered that.
that conversation's never been had at any business I was with. And they're all very, annoying about even making a statement. I had to address something.
That's sad to a point, though, isn't it?
It is, but I think that's what everybody's doing. That's why I wrote this. Even people that I talk to that are with other businesses. Well, this is in place, and somehow that same regulation is in place all over the place, no matter what the corporations are. But at some point, who's going to? I tried to do the statistics run and say, take a look at the statistics and own them as a business. Okay, what do we want to achieve, and how can we achieve it? What programs are necessary if they need to be more educated for these positions? Or just walk out of your office and look around and say, you know what, this isn't right.
So do you believe that the higher ups are still, if they ever were, I happen to believe that they were, are, not were. Do you happen to believe that the higher ups were and are still happen to take the written policy as the cure rather than implementing the written policy?
That is the biggest key for me, because when there are regulations set, it makes you, it's very easy to say, well, we're doing what we're supposed to. But
we had a committee. We wrote a policy. Right. We had sensitivity training. We're all good. Cured. Hey, cured. Everything's great.
But you still got that guy in that room by himself trying to figure out why people are laughing at certain things and so on. What I will tell you is, I think
more so 99% of the company's white.
Right.
And 100 folks of color came in here for a job, but you hired all white folk.
Right.
So, yeah, you got the policy, but you did nothing with it.
It's like school, you know what's there, but what else can you do, or what else? We talk about the political part of it, and I think that's a big play as well, because if I make the first move, then others either have to, or I'm taking a risk, but it's a good risk. I mean, Forbes says, the best companies are the most diverse. I mean, it's talked about all the time, because those become families and they realize their differences aren't as big as they thought. They just come from two different places. We're good people that are put in a situation where we have to call each other out for things that we don't even know we're doing. It talks to white privilege in the book, and not because people are wrong about it, because you're sitting there, you heard something, you didn't repeat it.
How do you define white privilege?
I think it's, being accountable and understanding that you have more than we do. And to that fact, more than we've ever had. I do agree with educating yourselves, but I worry, which is why my book wasn't 400 pages, because I don't think people want to read that long about that topic. I wanted to dance in areas that I thought were extremely important, things that I had to overcome or others like me had to overcome. But, getting back to what you said before, our top executive, our top guy sent out a really strong email after the George Floyd death. And I was enamored by it, because even some others were a little bit afraid about whether we should address it or not. I had people reaching out to me. So I wrote it up the ladder, and after he did, sent me a personal email and said he was thinking about me in the process of writing it. And I was moved by that, because they don't have to show their faces in most regards. So like I've said, I've had the ability to be around some really great people too, but this process, especially in corporations, changes hands, changes owners. Those things happen all the time, and their vision may not be what what the first person's was. The problem with that is now you're building from scratch again, because that person may be okay going back to the normal rules of what needs to be done. So I think, if you want, without getting too political here, if you want police,
you're on the wrong show.
If you want police to be
in the wrong place,
more comfortable, then hire more Black police, so that they can be more familiar with what they're dealing with and not so intense. Or, because like I said, it's not the color of the police, man. If you're Black, you're in a very short neighborhood, kind of like the corporation. So you got to lean on what you see, or you might be out, or you're going to catch as much slack as anybody else would. If you want, our Black students to become better students, then hire more Black teachers that are willing to deal with some of what they understand that we've gone through and others may not. But again, white privilege is about, opening up your eyes and being honest about what you're seeing and speaking out, when you feel it needs to be spoken out about, not, charging in the front and yelling and screaming, because, even we have to take a look at our approach in regard to that. But just understanding that, we've been through things that most can't even fathom. And if they tell you their stories, you may get bored with it because they're very long and some of them disturbing stories. But if we just enlighten ourselves a little bit more, so we stop walking past things that we know are wrong and not saying anything, then maybe the person next to them will say something if they hear them say it that first time.
You said something very interesting that I want to ask you about, because I think it might actually be a corporate definition of white privilege. If you and I work in the same office and we do the same job, I have a team, you have a team. The company is sold from this group of folks to this group of folks. You just mentioned to me that you worry that you have to start over. I don't. I don't have that inherent worry that I have to start over. But you do. Is that not the actual very definition of white privilege? Especially, even though you and I have expanded this conversation, and I did that purposefully. I wanted to expand the definition because I think your experiences and your life experiences, to be blunt, which might actually be the reverse of why you wrote the book. I think your experiences go beyond this book.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to actually bring it back into the book. Is that not the actual corporate, inside the corporate bubble definition of white privilege? Because you just said you have to worry then that whatever racial gains are made under this group of ownership, once they sell, you fear you have to start all over again. I don't worry about that. Isn't that the actual corporate definition of of white privilege?
Yes. In the book, I also talk about, even determination process, understanding their frustration, why they may be a little bit more defensive, because their thought is, I'm not walking down the street to fill out another application. This could be it for me. I could be going back to where I grew up and how I grew up. And, it's all of that baggage that you carry with you already as a person of color. So when you walk into a business and they're setting parameters that aren't reachable, and you've already overcome as much as you have just trying to get a chance to grow up and be about something, that's what makes it extremely frustrating. And, to your point, white privilege is, owning an organization and realizing that it's not where it needs to be and not saying anything about it as the person that can. It won't change tomorrow. But if we keep waiting to talk about it, if I would have waited another couple years for this book, the experiences and the surroundings would not have changed.
We're at the bottom of our second hour already, flying through the program here on 26 July 2020, the Kennedy Effect for yet another Sunday, our third Sunday with the Hot101.net family, and we could not be happier to be part of this great Hot101.net family, one of the grandparents, one of the very first internet radio stations. We are global on Hot101.net. You can listen to Hot101.net on the main website at, of course, Hot101.net. If you do not have the Hot101.net app, you can get it at the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or you can listen on the TuneIn Radio app. If you want to advertise with our program, you can do so. Let's talk about it. Drop me an email at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. If you are watching on Facebook, listening on Facebook, you can do so anywhere that we have shared the program, anywhere that any of our loyal listeners have shared the program. But it is only at our home group page that other side of information where we will see your comments and questions. The phone line is open. You can see the phone calls are just flooding in. I'm so mystified by this phone call thing. It is my holy grail. I am chasing it like Captain Ahab himself. The phone call thing continues to be a mystery to me. I don't understand it. The phone line is open. Let me just quickly explain to you again how the phone line works. Now Apple tells me there's a software update. I don't have time for that right now, Apple, but thank you. I will get to that later this evening. I am running Zoom through my MacBook. That is how I am speaking to James, and that is how we are sharing that to Facebook. We're also running the program that sends the audio part of the program, to our great family and listeners at hot101.net. We're also running a little piece of software called Google Voice. That is how you can call the program, and that is how all the listeners all over Facebook and all over the globe will hear you, as well as my honored guest, author James Holley, author of the new book, The Black Handbook for Corporate White America. The subtitle, The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. You can get James's new book anywhere that you get your books. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's marketed on over 500 different media outlets over the next few weeks. The New York Times centerfold with over 11 other different authors, and I think the next 3 weeks, if I'm reading this correctly, it will be spotlighted on
in about 2 weeks. It will be
in about 2 weeks. It'll be spotlighted on the gray old lady, the New York Times. If you didn't know that, that's what we call the gray old, the New York Times, the gray old lady. I'm aging myself there a little bit.
That conversation happened based on, they did a review of the book and talked about the current climate and what's going on, and they became extremely interested in what we could do with it, and built up a little marketing team. And I told the wife the other day, I said, I don't know, at the end of the day, how great a writer I'm going to be. I'm going to put another book out within the next 2 weeks or so that I've been working on as well. But my story is worthy. And that's what people have to understand, and it takes a lot to have a success story on the end of, something that started so tragic. But, part of that is the belief. And if we silo ourselves by not thinking that we're ready, or we're opportune, or the right person, or they'll never choose us, then we're already taking two steps backwards that you may not get forward again. So I went through a long time where, my voice didn't matter and I didn't think it should be heard. And then I got to a point where I demanded that it be heard. And I got more involved in what was going on, with our youth. And, the funny thing is, as great a time as I had with the Bethlehem Area School District, because between the executive director and the members there, it just was phenomenal to work with them. But I resigned a year ago because it still was a situation where I didn't see a lot that looked like me. And I felt like I had to be a part of getting closer to our youth and some of the things that were really on the forefront at that point. And the excitement that they had in regard to that, but understanding that it was out of their control a little bit, based on what the regulations are at the end of the day, it turned out to be a really good conversation, and I could be as honest as I needed to. But, you have to take all things.
Even in Bethlehem, because Bethlehem is not exactly the most monolithic city. So even in Bethlehem, you don't think you saw enough faces like you?
No.
Simply because
there was a Hispanic one, I believe, but beyond that, and in the 5 or 6 years, there was never a Black board member.
Wow.
But I never, in that mode, my voice was always heard, and they wanted to hear it. So that calming scenario gave me a feel where, okay, now I understand what I bring to the table. So different little things that I thought were risky, or I'm not sure how I fit. I took a risk because there's no reward without it. And some of those risks didn't pay off, but I learned from them. I made sure that I did. Because you can't tell somebody that they cannot do something, like I said earlier, in a way that if you say these are the things I have to work on for this position, I'm going to work my tail off and outwork everybody else. If I finally do get that job, the burden of having to work twice or three times as hard as everybody else in that room will never go away. It will never go away because I always feel like I have to be at my best, even if they might be at their worst. And I'm okay with that because it's not a bad ship where I'm mad at everybody. It's a good ship that I use to challenge myself. And now I have the ability to build others up into leaders. And that's the part that I really wanted, because to me, that's a true leader. When you can build others up that can look across a business differently and see things differently and do them differently, it's a culture at that point. And that's what I believe that we can all do in every business, on every street, in every, venue. I think that if we literally just have some conversations and people are open and honest, they won't see the differences. Kids don't, not unless we tell them. When you just want to, some people just want to know why, or what's going on, or how it happened. True story. After about 10 and a half years on the phone, there weren't many leaders that spoke to me a lot in the business. So one of them, who is still a mentor to this day for me, she came to me and said, listen, if you want to move up, there's some things you have to do differently, right? I had the quote unquote gold chain, very casual. I do the khakis because that's what they asked, but corn rolls, whatever it may be, earring in. And she said, listen, you know how much I enjoy you. Here's what you need to do. Take the earring out, take the gold chain off, throw a suit on, and let people hear you in an interview. And I wonder how awkward that would have been for someone to have that conversation. But she was so open in asking different things to get to understand the culture and so on, that it was okay for her to say that to me. But what if she never would have? I would have just went on thinking, I'm going to dress the way I want to. I'm going to wear what I want to wear because I'm not going to get there anyway. But she was bold enough to say something in a way where I knew she was spot on. I didn't take offense to it. I got what she was saying. But I also,
based on years of previous discussions with her,
right,
she knew she could have that conversation with you, and you knew that you could hear that conversation from her.
That's right. That's right. And again, you can't just blurt anything out to someone, but if they trust the conversation that you have, to your point, they will open it up a little bit. But I would have never said, well, is this why, or asked anybody, and most of them wouldn't have said why. So I would have just been sitting there for another 10 years, probably on the phones, happy that I had a good income to take care of my children instead of expecting more from myself. So again, I explained some of those things in there so that people understand it better. I don't have those conversations any different than a white leader would, because there are confines in what you can speak to in corporate America. So even if all the, the Black associates want to come to me as the guy to kind of stand up for certain things, there's only so much you can say. But I am a part of an organization at this point that listens, at least. And it's something that, you pass by it even as an associate, because you want to stop asking the same questions of why. But what we do then again is take a step backwards, because we're losing all the knowledge in the room. So I figured, you know what? Let me take all of this on, and then maybe I can help share some of that knowledge or pay it forward. Or, if nothing else, I want people to see success. I'm not worried about the sales of the book at the end of the day, because if this starts some conversation that wasn't happening before, then it served its purpose. And again, I wanted to be in a good place at the end of this to tell the story. I didn't want to be bitter about all the things that might have happened. I didn't want to be, pointing the finger or telling people that, they need to change everything. Things have changed. It's just not going to happen as fast as we want it to, but it definitely needs to be a lot quicker than it is. Because again, I could have told this same story 26 years ago without a good ending. The change isn't any different. What I see isn't any different. The way people respond to me, the way they act towards me, that have worked with me for a while, You couldn't ask for better. But I still get on the elevator after 26 years and get a look every now and then, depending on what part of that group that they may be with, you know. So it's the same, you know. It's not a lock your door scenario, but it's you're different, and different can be good if we just take a minute to listen. We're not trying to take anything from anyone else. We just want more of what we deserve. So again, when people say, well, I've never had to deal with that. If they give you the story, there'd be 10 to 20 things that you've never had to deal with. But you don't want to give back what you have now. We don't want you to. We just want you to be honest about the fact that we deserve a piece of that pie as well.
Phone number for the show is 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. If you have questions for author James Holley and or myself, 267-227-9189. You mentioned earlier on in the program your inspiration for writing the book, but isn't it really more the inspiration for writing the book now?
I think it was always a plan because things never changed. But now that people are actually listening and you're seeing, you know, some people admit that they don't understand and now they're starting to get it a little bit. I think that made it the perfect time because people seem to be more open to listening. And again, unfortunately, tragedy, you know, can set that off. But this man may go on forever as the person who changed, you know, life as we know it as well. It's unfortunate, but I hope that, you know, that we put some life to his meaning. I mean, some meaning to his life and handle this in a way where we can make progress. You know, we can scream and yell forever, but at some point we just have to talk about it. And I've had a lot of people that I've been able to talk to. I've had some that were very open to wanting to know. And I've been honest in those convos, not upset, not angry, you know, not don't do it again, but you hear things early on and you start to get used to it. It becomes the norm. And if you don't have an ally, you know, and it shouldn't feel like that in the business, but if you don't feel like you have that one solid ally, it makes it tough to get up and take a deep breath and look around on a regular basis. You start wondering if you should even be there.
You're 48, so you're not old by any stretch of the imagination, but were you afraid in any way of your story getting lost? Was the murder, outright murder, I will not refer to it any differently, of Mr. Floyd the catalyst? You said this was always the plan, but was Mr. Floyd's murder just the final straw to say, I need to get this done now? Were you afraid of this story being lost?
No, it was the conversation around it that really grabbed a hold of me because it started to explore different areas and different things that need to be looked at. It's very tough from t-shirts to anything else for me to unless there was a point where I felt like, you know, this is a reason to write it and find a way to give back as well. But I didn't want it to blanket any of what was going on in that moment. And mine, although racial inequality is a part of corporations as well, you know, didn't really loom in the world of what happened to him. You know, that is a whole nother story that, again, people are very scared to talk about. But we've seen it again right in our own town. And, you know, I just think that when you see noise and hear these things that are happening and looting, and how loud do you have to be before people start to pay attention? You know, and the louder you get, the less they pay attention. So the fact that they have the ability to do that after they haven't been listened to for so long and hundreds of years is the frustrating part about waiting until, you know, someone tragically dies to have a real conversation, and it taking that for people to be open enough to go, this isn't right, and it hasn't been for a very long time. We've been crying, screaming, and yelling forever. You know, our experiences weren't as tragic, but there has been many of times where you left with bumps and bruises and you didn't even really understand why until you went home and had a real conversation. And for me, that was a white mother having to have that conversation with a black son and where I shouldn't be and where I couldn't be and act like others did because they didn't feel like I belonged there. So even if I would get an invite after basketball practice, be careful, about where you go. And I think about those conversations right now and how hard they were for her and how even our family wouldn't really take her in. And in the Black neighborhoods we grew up in, the women showed her how to do her kids' hair and, how to cook like them and, almost took her under her wing when they could have pushed her out and said, you don't belong here either. But when we went to the grocery store, everyone thought she was babysitting, or it was not believable for us to be her children. So I've seen it my whole life. And some of it, even back then, was inquisitive, which means some people just don't know. And if they're open to listen and we're telling them in a manner that causes conversation, it can change things. I don't know how much of that change it can cause, but I believe people are the difference in all of this. I think we consume everything else, including politics, unless we're just so edgy one way or the other that we're not going to listen to anyone else. But that's where, that's my insight on it. I just think that it was a moment where everybody was listening based on what was going on. But once the conversation started curbing to other things like, educational resources and things of that sort, that's when I wanted to say, what happens even after the education? What if they do end up going to a great place, but you don't fit the mold? And by mold, I mean black or white, depending on who you're interviewing with.
You mentioned that you made a very conscious effort to keep the book at the size that you kept it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How hard was that?
It was extremely hard. I remember the editor getting back to me.
So why not just let it all hang out?
I don't think people will listen to that much of it. I don't know if we're at the point, even though people are listening, where they're going to be listening to long drawn out stories. I didn't want it to be about one individual, although I do have a chapter of my own. And the funny thing is the editor said this could have been a book on itself when he was breaking it down for me a little bit. I just wanted to give a gist of what survival looked like and what success looked like for me. And
so there is a tiny bit of autobiography in here.
Yes. Yeah, that is actually, my journey is actually one of the chapters. And it talks about my process through and my thinking and how my mind changed. And I had to step around. So it's really a navigation over 26 years of how I was able to not just, fit in or stay with an organization, but rise to the top and be more confident about that approach, even if things didn't change.
Do you know who's playing you in the movie yet?
I wanted it to be bits and pieces so that, people could look at it and see the reality of what goes on. So, the editor talked to me about almost, it was like a dictation, which is something he wasn't used to in a book. But each chapter is like a story of, this is what you deal with and this is what we're thinking. Trying to give you an idea of what we're thinking in those moments when they say things like, that's so ghetto. I heard somebody say one day, and I'm thinking, and it was about something that just a really bad situation. And I'm thinking, you're having a conversation with somebody that, grew up there, and you've taken that word and put it on, using it as an analogy for something that's terrible, but not considering how terrible it is for the people that grew up there and understanding why it became that. So even simple things like that, just in conversation, I was poor too, or, everybody's on the back and forth about Black lives and all lives. I think we all know that all lives matter. I just think that there's a reality about the fact that we need to take a step back and look at, what Blacks have dealt with for so long and rally around.
Well, that's the funny thing to me about all lives matter is that it's missing a word, isn't it? It's only missing one word. You could have a guess at it if you wish, but I think you already know what the word is.
I'll leave it to you.
That's what the all lives matter folks are missing. All lives matter. This is a family show. I stay away from the magic 7 words. Even though this show is not regulated by the FCC, I stay away from this magic 7 words that the FCC doesn't let you use. So all lives matter. Well, no kidding. No bloody kidding. The point is that all lives matter equally.
Perfectly said.
And you cannot say that all lives matter when they clearly do not matter equally. That's the bloody point.
There it is.
You're all missing. And when you go into the streets, here's a little message for the all lives matter folks. When you parade yourselves in the streets as if to say, and here's the real message of you parading in the streets, folks. Here's what the all lives matter folks parading in the streets. You're marching in the streets as the hidden message of your parading and counter protesting in the streets, as if to say, goodness gracious, if only there was a society where white folks could get ahead. Well, what do you think is being happening?
You know, I said
since the fall of the Egyptian Empire, what do you think has been happening? If only there was a fair society where white men could get ahead. What do you think has been going on for the better part of 5,000 years? Probably since I'm in no way a professor of ancient history. That said, I'm going to go with, you're an educated man, James, feel free to disagree. I'm going to go back to the fall of the Egyptian Empire, maybe the Persian Empire. But if only there was somewhere in history where a white guy could get ahead. Well, we've had it for about 5 millennia. That's what you folks counter-protesting are saying. You've had it.
It tells us, again, that we don't matter as much, because even with something so terrible going on, people are already tired of certain things changing and names of things change. Well, you got to rally up when you finally get people paying attention, because these same things have always been complained about. We are not saying we matter more. We just want to matter as much, just like you said.
And I think, to be honest, as a political strategist, what Black Lives Matter has not done well, and I suspect I shall get myself heaping loads of shite for this, is they've not done well to say, we're just trying to get even with you. We're not trying to get over on you. We're not trying to get anything that you do not already have. We're simply trying to catch up. Black Lives Matter is missing one word. And you probably know what that is too. Black Lives Matter also. Black Lives Matter too. Black Lives Matter the same. But it doesn't seem to roll off the tongue the same. And they haven't done well enough to make that point. And heaven forbid the dominant melanin-skinned group in this nation would ever conceive the fact that another group might get equal. That's
the struggle.
That is the struggle.
That's what it seems like.
And that's all.
They're afraid
and
of.
I happen to I desperately want to see. I want to continue to see, although I've seen no evidence of such, I want to continue to see our better angels. And that if these all lives matter, blue lives matter, which is just the most ridiculous thing. I want to believe in, when I say see, I want to believe in, I should use a better term for it, are better angels. That if the all lives and blue lives folks could just take a breath and just hear that all we're talking about here is if we could just get even with you.
Mhm.
Not ahead, not something you don't have that we can take for ourselves and run. We just want to get even. We're just trying to, and I don't mean get even with you. We're just in the same plane. All we're talking about is the same plane.
To get to where you are. That's all we're asking for. Give us
Just the
opportunity.
same plane. It's remarkable to me that I've been honored, and I don't throw that word out lightly, honored to speak to folks in our Lehigh Valley who fight this fight every day and have taken this argument from seemingly every angle that you could possibly think of. And when I break it down to the fact that you simply have a different melanin content than I, but we just want the same thing, and how even they can step back and go, well, geez, even I didn't think of it that way.
Right.
And when you get to some of these even militant all lives, blue lives folks and go, huh, yeah, we didn't really consider that.
Mhm.
That's all we're talking about here.
And that's the approach I try to take here.
It's just simple. These are simple things, folks.
I didn't want it to be over the top, where people felt like it was too much, or, they didn't want to read that much, because if you read that much, then you feel bad just because you do know and you still don't want to do anything.
No, and I don't want to put you in the position of having to defend your own book. You wrote it. You shouldn't have to defend it necessarily. But this is not a storm the castle sort of manifesto type publication here. This is we're just asking to open the door. We still have to interview. We've got to write the resume. We got to have the skills. Don't hire us for the fun of it or for a show or for the circus of it. We've got to earn the job, but just give us a seat at the table.
Right.
Am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong.
Spot on. I said, when I first started, and part of the reason I talked about the interview process is because when I first started, and, even in the book, I use words like, the hood and ghetto, because it's the reality of what we call it and where we come from. But I said, walking into the business the first day would be the same as a white person walking into the projects. The only difference is they don't ever have to, but we have to walk into their world to find ours. Now that changed over time, and it's become more of a robust hope, I would say, based on some things, but there's still a ton of work to do. And I know there are a million books out, so it wasn't like I was writing about something new, but when you get that look from someone who's been through it, it puts that stamp of approval on to say, you know what, he's just not talking the talk, he's walked the walk. But until I did, or again, became successful, then it was a story to me, and it needed to be told, because again, it could be what happened recently, it could be what's always happened, it could be what I still see to this day. But if I can take a different route to try to get people to have conversations and make change, then that is a task I'm willing to accept. Because if a story is real, it should be told and it should be heard, but you shouldn't feel spawned by it, or threatened at the end of the day, or bad about what you haven't done. But if you read it and then you don't start to think differently or do things differently within your workplace, then you're okay with the way it was. And even though you do have more knowledge, there's still more to do. and I got a few more books in me if need be.
You're gonna have a book about this crazy interview you did when I was selling my first book.
It's been a blast. It's been a blast.
We are entering hour 3, if you can believe it or not, 7 p.m. on the Eastern time zone, East Coast of the United States. I am with James Holley, author of The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, with the subtitle The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. Author James Holley, my first author on the Kennedy Effect, as we're in our third month, third week on hot101.net. So very, very proud to be part of the Hot 101 family. Great thanks to DJ Lexus, DJ Earl, and my producer, partner, shaman, spirit guide, April Riddick, and all things positive and powerful in this world, April Riddick.
The wonderful April. The wonderful.
You know April as well, so you know I speak the truth when I speak about that. James has about 15 more minutes with us before we have to part ways. 267-227-9189 is the phone line. You guys are just, you're just crushing that phone line. My goodness, I can barely keep track of the calls. He said, not all too sarcastically. Wherever you are listening, we are thrilled that you are here. Anywhere on Facebook, that other side of information is the home page. That's where I will see your questions and or comments. We've actually had quite a number of really nice, lovely comments, and I'm very, very appreciative of them. Haven't seen any questions come in. We're just, James and I are just rocking the conversation here a bit. No phone calls, obviously, as of that. If you want to call in, you're welcome to do so. 267-227-9189. James has to leave us at about 7. Wow, I'm very foggy in my glasses tonight. About 7:15. My fancy reading glasses. About 7:15, 7:20. James has to leave us. I will stay with you for a little bit after, as I usually do. If we don't see any calls, we'll wrap things up around 8 p.m.
I'll call in over the next week or two.
Nobody,
right?
I swear to God, if you don't, well, you work a regular general work day, a 9 to 5-ish type work day. I don't know if you get to listen to the radio during the day when you're in your office. Tom Hartman is the gold standard for me as far as political talk show. I could do with a bit more guests because he really has excellent guests. I think sometimes he cuts them a tad short. And he's very brief with callers. I think sometimes a little too brief as far as how he runs through them. Some he should be a little too short with, and others but it gets a little, but anyway, I think he's got 8 or 12 lines into the program, and they're always stacked up. He does 3 hours a day. He could probably do 6 hours a day with the number of people that call in. It's the 8th largest talk show in the country, and it's the number 1 progressive talk show in the country. I could only hope to be that successful, but it's the gold standard for me. And I do think that calls are a very, very important part of a political talk show. You want to talk to the people that are listening to you. You want them to be able to ask you questions. Questions stimulate discussion, and therefore, expands the reach of the show. It expands the hours that you can be on, the number of days that you can be on. If you're on more days, then here comes the advertisers, then it turns into a real thing. And if my company never opens back up, which I don't believe they're going to, he said, and hopefully the big guys listening up there, this becomes the job, and anyway, it all, the snowball rolls downhill and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But boy, I can't, for love nor money, can I get anybody to call this show? I don't know what the heck is going on. April keeps telling me, just breathe, calm down, they'll call eventually. Well, I wish eventually would get here, because I would like to expand the number of days that we're on. And, I wish this would become the job. But you have to, when you separate yourself, when you're doing the job, when you're in the office doing the job and you're interviewing a new prospective team member, is that difficult for you? How do you separate yourself, the coach, from the boss? If you have a prospective team member in front of you, especially if it's a person of color, and I almost feel weird kind of putting that layer on top of it. But you are a coach too. I mean, you did write this book from the perspective of a corporate leader of color. If you're interviewing a prospective new team member, and especially when it's someone of color, and they say that one, maybe it's that one thing to you, or that one phrase, or that particular word, or maybe a certain, I don't know. I'm kind of grasping at examples, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Maybe they cuss, or they wear that one thing as soon as they walk in, and you go, "Oh man, just, oh God, wish I could have talked to you before that, brother." And you just go, "Oh gosh, I wish I could have talked to you."
And color wasn't the issue for me. I think there's a tidiness that needs to be there to some extent, no matter what the situation is. I don't actually interview anymore because I didn't follow the cycle that everybody did. So they had questions and things that they were supposed to ask. And
so if you have an opening on your team, you're not doing the interviewing for them anymore yourself personally?
No, not okay.
So you don't have to make that.
Yeah, I have frontline leaders that make those decisions now. I have conversations with them about to be open. If you don't see what you want, then ask questions to draw out effort, passion. So based on what we talked about earlier, I got away from that. I would push the resume to the side. What makes you passionate? Not about this position, just what I want to know, those things in totality, because the holistic is what you're really looking for in a person, not the guy that had the best grades in school, because that percentage is why attrition is so bad. Everybody's looking for the same amount of experience in schooling. Well, those guys know that they're a hot commodity. So once you get them, you don't know if you're going to keep them. They can move to the next place. But if I find somebody that was in a different industry that doesn't make sense in ours, but they have a passion about their work ethic and what they can accomplish, that's the conversation. That's the person that I want as a part of my team.
Is mock interviewing part of your coaching?
Yes, without a doubt.
I do mock. I think the best way to prepare a candidate for, again, fill in the blank, town hall, 101 with a constituent, debate, is to do a mock, fill in the blank, debate, mock, town hall, mock, in radio interview, mock speech, mock whatever. So as part of your coaching is the mock interview, the mock, I mean, literally dress up, walk in the room, sit across the table, the whole 9 yards. You do. Is that how you approach the coaching part of it?
No, not if I was coaching to others coming into the organization, that's part of what the book does.
Mm-hmm.
The teams that I have are usually those within the organization that are moving up to another level. So I walk through my leaders and coaches that actually have the discussions with them so that they don't get pinpointed on not seeing enough and getting lost. And they just open up and have a conversation. What are you passionate about? See how that comes off. See how they, how they die, because tomorrow that could be your organization. If you make them a believer, I thought my job was to sell them the job. That's what I always felt my purpose was. And I never felt like I had to be the guy who hired a bunch of Black associates because the business never have, even in a senior director position, because I feel like my plight is to lead by example and show that the possibility is there to get it done, and be honest about what it takes to get there, and know that you have that gut and the grit to be able to get through it, because not everybody does. But I never felt like I had to be the guy to build that platform for the business, because that's outside of my reach. And I'm not going to give other people who don't deserve the opportunity based on what you told me a position, because there's not enough of them there. And while internally that bothers you a little bit at times, even with being, having leaders and things like that, you still have to, you can't allow yourself to fall into the same trap that everybody else has all these years.
So is your coaching then restricted to inside the business, or are you mentoring and coaching outside the business?
Inside the business.
Strictly inside.
Yes. I have teams in Greensboro, Tucson, Arizona, and then a Center Valley team as well. So when they get to the positions that I'm in
What,
charge of,
one of these things is not like the other. Greensboro, Tucson, Center Valley.
yeah, the West Coast out there,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
where I've been most of the time. And it's always about the people. That's what my coaching is about, and the success is based on how they rally around each other, and the way the leaders approach and the involvement that's there. And the goal for me as a leader was always people were fired up about coming to work the next day regardless of how the day before went. So I do want to know what you want to do in the future, even if it isn't here. Our job is to prepare you for what's next, whatever that may be. I do want to know what your kids' names are. I do want to know why you're here and what you want to accomplish, because if I can be a part of making that happen for you, now there's a commitment to the business, and it's not just another job, it can be a career. I just don't want people to think they're not equipped enough. And
I
that
think
just became a
we've
passion for me.
lost so much of that. So much of that has been lost in uh, my traditional career work of warehousing and in corporate world. So much of that personal, that people matter and that people have lives and that they're living, breathing creatures with wives or husbands or children or house payments, or the car broke down, or I hurt my back shoveling the snow out of the driveway to get here on time, or I had a flat tire, or mom is sick, or the folks that are your age, my age, that still their parents are still alive. And my dad's passed, and my work could not have been more gracious to me with just whatever time, take it. And they never took it off my vacation. I still had all my vacation time when I was done, and
Mhm.
they never took not a minute from me. And all that stuff seems to just have been lost. We're just all spark plugs now. Just, oh, one breaks, you take it out and put another one in, and it's all being lost.
They
And it just it
it's impossible with everything else you have to deal with. And like, even in the circumstances we're at now, where people, we are advantageous enough to work from home and so on, but it's still this constant sense of being overwhelmed.
right.
So it's hard to tear away from them. And the wife over the years would say, "You're better than me. I don't know how you do it." Things of that sort. And I just let it continue to build me up into who I needed to be. And I figure this: if I was going to be in a business, and this doesn't happen, but if it did, and you were going to call me out of my name or have a sidebar conversation with your friends about me, you're going to say it anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to let you take away the ability for me to take care of my family and sit at home while you say it, but you're still 2 rooms over. So I guess you deal with so much of it, you can either compartmentalize it, learn to understand it, know that it's people that just aren't educated at times, or you can ball it all up and blow up on a regular basis based on things that you're only upset at because one person reacted that way. If everybody you've ever interviewed with reacted that way, then I get it. But that's one person. And regardless of what color they are, we still have to believe when we walk away from that situation, there will be another person to talk to us.
You are getting down to your last couple minutes. This is unfair to shove in two such big questions at the end. And then I'm going to open the floor. You get out any information that you want to get out, contact, all that fun stuff. What do you want? Well, wait, it was two questions. Why should people buy this? And what do you want them to take away from? Why should they buy the book? What do you want them to take away from the book?
They should buy the book because it talks to something that I think we're all very curious about, but they should internalize it because each and every one of us is going to play a part in this change, whether it's this show, hot101.net being risky enough to even talk about it, right? You can't go on to any show. And this hasn't been a back and forth or a crazy conversation. It's been a real one. So what I want to get from it is, you know, why it was so hard, so that that part of it is understood, but also enlighten areas that can easily be changed if we just own what's going on and start having the conversation about how it can change. This in no way is about others not having jobs or being able to get jobs so we can get more of them. To your point earlier, it's about understanding that it's not an even keel right now. You can't just look around and see what you see and not say anything. And that we're not upset with every individual that's not the same as us. We're upset with the system, because systematic racism is something that's always been there and hidden in many different ways. And it's hard for us to call it out. But even then, we weren't pointing at the individual. This is about everybody owning their part of how this can get better, whether it's the way the Blacks prepare for these opportunities, whether it's the way they're open for our preparation and what we bring to the table. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's going to close this book and go, I don't get it. I think they're going to go, it's an admirable path, but why did it have to be that way? And why does that have to continue? And in listening to some of these things, even the slimmest of things that you probably shouldn't say and the reaction that it can cause, saying that we're violent and why we don't feel that way. It's kind of a picture where you have two talking to each other. One is saying, well, this is how I feel. And the other one's saying, well, this is why we feel the way we do. So that they don't have to question themselves in every conversation or every time someone of color approaches them, so that they're not uncomfortable when they're having interviews with them because they are different. They don't veer off because of the first word that's pronounced a little bit differently based on how much of the other things that person brings to the table. So again, I didn't want it just to be about my story, but I wanted it to be understood so they understood the plight that I had to take and the way I had to navigate through the waters. But for everyone else, I wanted to be an eye-opener for them, to be honest about things that they already know happen in corporate America and be open to what's going to change that.
And that's and again, you said it, but I want to push it. It's real. This is not a novel.
No.
This is it's a guide. It's a yes, it's a story. There's
Right.
said it's partly, there's a chapter that's your biography in it, but it's instructional. This is a real story.
Right. So I thought handbooks at work, right? You don't want to read them, but you do most times because they're short and you might be signing your life away if you don't, because you don't know what's in them,
It's not a lecture. It's not a dissertation. It's not a screaming match, but this is a real story. This is a real, maybe I shouldn't even say story, but this is a real book.
Real things that someone experienced, real things that other people, of color experience that I've worked with or have worked other places. And, a real story about some of the very simple things that can be done so that people feel more a part of what's going on, and finding ways to get that internal fortitude, that can be impossible in a workplace to get from them. How do you pull that out of people or make them feel like they're a part of something when it doesn't look that way? So that probably would be another thing that I would say on a regular basis. How can this book be set up so that you understand a little bit more about what people are dealing with and what you can do about that? And it could be the peer that just got hired the same month they did that can make that difference.
What are all the ways that people can reach you are a public figure now, sir. Congratulations. What are all the ways that folks can, well, you were before, obviously, everybody can see the backdrop behind you, including a picture of a mic. So you're not unfamiliar with what we're doing here. But how can folks reach you? Website, where do they get the book? How do people contact you? All of that, the floor is yours. How do people reach James Holley?
So originally the book was listed on Zebrus, which is my publisher site. And that is X, L as in Larry, I, B as in boy, R as in rat, I, S as in sat. over the last couple of days, it's actually hit Amazon, and unfortunately, I didn't know that until someone sent it to me and got it from there. But I knew it was happening soon, so it is on Amazon. There are a lot of engines that are being run so that I can be found on Google as well, Barnes and Noble, and then there's also going to be a listing in the New York Times in the future. The email address right now that I use is mine, my personal, which is Holley, my last name, J0301 @gmail.com. The background is Hollywood Truth. So right now I'm in the process of getting the LLC, because I want to take this a little bit further. So in the process of getting the LLC done, and then the website will be there with a different email as well. But you know how it goes, one step at a time, buddy. Got to reap some of those rewards and take a step forward sometimes. But I'm just delighted that
we'll make you part of the hot101.net talk family.
No, without a doubt. I'll be glad to join on a regular basis. Again, what I'm asking businesses to do is what you're doing and what hot101.net is doing right now, allowing people to have conversations in a good manner that can reach more people. So
easy, good-natured manner. No, relaxed, easy, good-natured exchange.
That's it. I'm not mad. I can't be mad anymore. I've been upset at certain things that have occurred, very upset, because of how it probably impacted their community, their families. But I'm not upset anymore about what I didn't have. My future is set on building something so that other people can go and get it. But yeah, right now the email is the direct connect to me, but the ability to find the book is on any of those websites. And there'll be a little bit more publication. They're going to a lot of news and media outlets over the next couple of weeks, so there should be a little bit more of a shake. Trying to get used to some of the publicity, man, but I'm always better when I'm talking about others,
Don't forget who had you first. Don't forget who had you first. I got to thank April for that, but don't forget who had you first. Well, listen, I know you need to go. I cannot thank you enough for being here. I hope you enjoyed being here. Hope you found it as easy and relaxed as I like to think that it is. Is there anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to get to? Anything that you wanted to mention that you don't think that we got to? Any important points that you don't think that we covered?
You were all over it, brother.
We were all over it.
I liked it. We got deeper into it than I even had notes for, But I
got through a lot of the notes. I did pretty well with the notes, but I like it.
Questions in there too,
we like it to be organic.
I love it.
Like it to be organic, and look, I mean, if you make an important point, I think we should follow it. I mean, I think the education part of it is a big deal.
Yes.
I mean, if you didn't do the part of the education that you had to do, that you, James, had to do, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And there are thousands of kids that are being that are not getting the same opportunity. They can put all of their energy into it as much as they want. The other half of the equation is not being met, and that's not fair. So we have to hold up our end of the bargain. They're holding up their end of the bargain. We need to hold up our end of the bargain. That's why I wanted to pursue that thread. And yes, you wrote the book. The book is enormously important, and it's enormously timely. My goodness, it couldn't be coming out at a better time. It's sad. I think the catalyst for the timing of it is beyond sad. I think we should not forget that. We should not forget that the catalyst for the timing of this is beyond tragic and beyond sad. I am, dare I say, glad that we are not losing the momentum and taking advantage of this. But the catalyst for it is beyond sad. We cannot forget that. So the timing is very appropriate, and I'm that's fortunate.
I think even the most disastrous situations or the most tragic, we have to find a way to let that drive us in the right direction. We cannot veer off because it's just going to start the whole process over again. So when I say I'm not going to yell and scream anymore, there's nothing against those who are, and they may have a right to at the end of the day. But there are different ways to own your voice, and that is what matters.
Because it's your voice. You might as well own it, and you might as well use it because no one else is going to use it for you. So you might as well own it and use it. So thank you very much for being here. I actually stretched you out a tiny bit beyond when you said you needed to leave, but I will let you on your way. I do hope this is not the last time that I see you. The door is open. Thank you so very much. Just thank you. I mean, I'm honored that you were here. You're my very first author, and
I'm honored on that one.
I hope that we Hot 101 has been tremendous, and they've been open-minded and courageous about bringing some new things to the station.
That's the word I was looking for.
Courageous.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. I mean, they
an opportunity to talk about something that I want others to be courageous around. So that's another step. There's a million of these things going on, but I've been able to go in there and cheat around and look at some things, and the topics of conversation are real, and you guys are having real conversations. So I'm part of the team now, my man.
Well, they already have the music covered. I mean, that's brilliant. You can go to the hot101.net Facebook page and see the DJs working hard, spinning great music for you all the time. And they've been open-minded and courageous about bringing these discussions and something different to the station. These are not minor discussions. We're not, no offense to gardeners, I guess, but for the lack of a better topic, we're not, talking about planting flowers here. I mean, these are weighty, heavy topics.
And also, for me, very personal. So I applaud your team, Jeff, and the team at hot101.net for, to your point, being courageous. And courageous doesn't mean that you're putting yourself in a bad situation. It means that you're one of the first to say, you know what, it's okay to have these conversations if they're had the right way. And we are pushing towards change as well. So personally and professionally, I appreciate you and your team. You guys keep up the great work. I will be chiming in. And if nothing else, you're going to get a few calls from me, brother.
Well, hallelujah, because my goodness, nobody else is. I don't know what. I don't know if I have to start throwing money out the window or what. I'll tell you. And I don't have any. I have none. There's no money, folks. I don't know what else to do. But that said, listen, please don't be a stranger. If you're not a guest, tune in each week. I look forward to you contributing. I hope you will not be a stranger. I've not had a repeat guest yet, but the door is open to you. I hope you are not. This is not the only time that you and I speak. And when it, even though our counties are both in green, I hope that as we continue, we are seeing a spike in cases. I hope that when it gets even safer, that we will be able to see each other in person and share a meal, and that this friendship continues to grow, and that we get to see each other in a social setting and continue the conversation.
That'd be real cool, buddy. Listen, man, you got something great going on there.
Well, tell everyone you know.
You got something real good going on there, man. Hang in there and stay with it.
Thank you so much for being here, James.
All of your listeners and all your viewers, thanks for taking some time to spend with me today. I appreciate you listening to the message. Hope you buy the book. Hope you enjoy it. Again, building conversation, one conversation at a time.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for being here. I really do sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll see you soon, my man.
Peace to you. Stay safe over there. You and the whole family. Stay safe.
You too.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
So we say goodnight to James. We thank him so extremely, extremely much for being here. My first author on the program. I mean, I'm thrilled. I can't tell you how happy I am to see that. What a great conversation. 7:30, bottom of the third hour on the East Coast of the United States. Wherever you are listening and watching on Facebook, we thank you very, very much for being here. Wherever you are watching, whatever page or group you are watching with, if you are watching live, thank you. If you're watching on the recording, thank you. If you have questions or comments that you would like to submit to me, great. I cannot speak for James. I will try to a little bit based on our conversation, but I cannot speak for him. But if you have questions or comments, you can submit them in the chat at our home group page, That Other Side of Information. To our Hot101.net family, thank you. We are in week 3 live on Hot101.net. You can listen to Hot101.net on the main website at Hot101.net. If you do not have the Hot101.net app, you can get the app at the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or you can go to the TuneIn radio app. Hot101.net also has a Facebook page. You can see the show there, and we thank you for that. Also, if you have a business anywhere, literally anywhere on the globe, as Hot101.net is a global outlet, one of the grandparents of internet radio. If you would like to advertise with the Kennedy Effect, drop us an email at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. And we'll do a live read. We'll do a commercial for you right here live on the show. Nice and easy. And knowing the way that I can speak and go on and on and on, it might even be very long and very verbose. So I have received a text message from my show IT that he has tried to call me and that the Google voice is not functioning. And that might be why I am not receiving calls. That said, the Google Voice, which is the piece of software that I use to speak to you when you try to call the show, is on. I am looking at it now that it is functioning. And yes, it appears to be functioning, and that it I'm not showing any missed calls, which I find odd, and it appears that it is working. I cannot tell that it is not working. This is all fascinating radio to all of you, I know, and I apologize. It appears to be working. I do not understand why I'm not getting phone calls. What I have to do is, I know this is terribly not exciting to all of you. It's all very technical, I guess, or it's powerfully simple, and I'm just the blithering idiot that can't make it work right. But what happens is, again, I use this wonderful little piece of software called Google Voice, and that's the phone number that we use for the show. You dial it, I see it come up on the screen, and that's how, when you call me, that everyone on Hot101.net and Facebook gets to hear you. It sort of rings on my mobile phone, but it gets forwarded to this Google number. And I actually do have it forwarded to the correct number, 267-227-9189, except that my IT, the show IT guru, my dear friend George, is telling me that he has dialed the number and that it's not going through. So that might be why no one has called. That would be my luck, because that just is how it is. We can't have anything work just properly on a regular basis, heaven forbid. But I will again say to you that if you would like to try to call the show, please do. The number is 267-227-9189. I imagine that if it continues to not function, George will probably let me know. If it's not working, he'll probably continue to let me know. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. As far as everything that I can tell, the Google Voice is in fact working. So I am without explanation for that. So I got nothing. I got nothing extra for you on that. Anyway, James's book. Let me just tell you. Let me just once again remind you of the book title, The Black Handbook for Corporate White America. The subtitle is The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. That's James Holley, Holley, James Holley. The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and will be featured in the New York Times within the next 2 weeks. Within the next 2 weeks. Oh, hey, how about that? Cannot connect your call. Google Voice could not make your call. I didn't call anyone. That's interesting. Unless someone tried to call me. Oh, Google, we do love you. I think somebody did actually try to call me, and I either hung up on them or something went wrong. So I apologize if that was you, whoever the heck that was that just tried to call me. I'm rebooting the Google Voice. So if you would like to call the show, please do so. I realize that all of this like production stuff is terribly, terribly exciting radio. Truth of the matter is, it is not exciting radio. I believe me, it isn't. I know it isn't, and I apologize for it. But again, I am on my own here. It is just me in front of 2 laptops and a tablet and 2 mobile phones and a very small mixing board. So we are hoofing through things. It's just me. There's no producer, no IT person. I'm flying solo, gang, and we're trying to hoof through this. So I actually shut down the Google Voice and reopened it. Hopefully that will work. You know, just like most computers, what's the first thing the IT guy tells you to do? Did you turn it off and start it again? I cannot restart this laptop, or I will shut down Zoom and I will shut down the software that sends me to Hot 101, and that would not be a good thing. So I cannot shut down Google entirely, but I did close it and open it back up again. So perhaps that will work. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. Let's have a look back at the week, shall we? I think one of the biggest things that you can look back on this week, among many, in what was a first world country descending into third world status, with cement tied to its feet being thrown into a very, very deep bit of water, is Portland. If you are not paying attention to what is going on in Portland, you need to do so. What is happening in Portland is nothing shy of frightening. It is nothing shy of dystopian. It is nothing shy of what science fiction novels are written about. It is Fahrenheit 451. It is the Hunger Games. It is Maze Runner. It is 1984. It is the old Apple Mac commercials. It is World at War. It is everything that we were told could never happen here. And it is something that should literally scare every single one of you. Now, whether they will admit it or not, there are Republicans that listen to this program. Some of them will disagree with me. Believe it or not all of them, but some will disagree with me. And that is their right. They're incorrect, but that is their right. You've seen lawmakers, and not all of them Democrats, by the way, some Republicans who voted on the original legislation to create the Department of Homeland Security in the first place, have come out and said that they regret that vote and that this is not the department that they voted to create. They are correct. But in America, where so-called police dressed like soldiers of war, completely unmarked, except for the occasional flag, maybe a name tag, in unmarked vans, literally pulling up, grabbing people, throwing them into the vans. No charges for arrest. When those people either invoke their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination or their right to an attorney, are then immediately released and never told what they were grabbed for in the first place. Some denied medical care. Press intentionally attacked after identifying themselves as press. These are the kinds of things that we never thought could happen here. These are the kinds of things that prior to this regime, we would decry if we saw it happening in another country. These are the kind of things that the United Nations travels the world and says, these are the acts of dictatorships. These are third world, mob-like, cartel-like warlord-like tactics, and they're happening right here. It started with Portland. It is spreading. I know it's become a bit of a clever, even laughable type meme. Ooh, hey, somebody rang. Let's see. 201-323. You are on the air. First name only and municipality, please. Where are you calling from?
George Dare. Oh, sorry, George and from Strasbourg. Sorry, did it again.
Well, now that we all know where you're living, now that we can all trace where you're coming from, George.
Yeah, you can.
Now that we all know where you live, and now that those unmarked troops will be coming to your home shortly, now I can send them directly to your door. Well, now that we know the phone line's working, George, thank you, sir. Although I did identify you earlier as my ringer, as the IT ringer. Your reputation is salvaged, sir. The phone line is working.
Okay, great.
But if you had a question, you were welcome to throw it out there.
No, when you were talking about Portland, I was thinking about the brown shirts, like from Nazi Germany. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, I would
only say this, and I say this with no pleasure. Let's remember Godwin's law. The first one who invokes the Nazis loses the argument. So I'm not a fan. And this regime is the one that makes you want to defy Godwin's law, and the one that almost makes Godwin's law makes you want to throw it out the window.
Right.
But I also want to keep that in mind, because that's some pretty heady stuff. But
Okay.
that said, you're not entirely incorrect, because let's remember what we're talking about with these so-called police in Portland. And the videos are very, very easy to see. These are quote unquote police that are dressed, and I just said it not a few minutes ago, that are dressed like soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not dressed like heavily armed police, they're dressed like soldiers.
Right.
Where white unmarked vans are pulling up, grabbing people into the van and driving off.
Right.
You are beginning to get stories from these folks who are being pulled into these vans, putting their stories out and telling what happened to them. Some of them have said, and the stories have been remarkably consistent, well, what happened to you? Well, some of them were roughed up. Not all.
Mm-hmm.
All have said they were never read their rights. They were never charged. And all have said that when they either invoked their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination and or demanded their constitutional right to legal representation, they were turned loose. That is third world stuff.
Yep.
If it happened somewhere else, we would be appalled.
Yeah.
If it happened somewhere else, we'd be demanding that the UN went in and did something about it. We'd be at the UN Civil Rights Commission. We invaded Grenada for less.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
It was funny because when because you were talking about the dystopian society, and you were mentioning different movies. When Trump won, the next day I posted on Facebook. It's a scene from the Dead Zone where Christopher Walken has this power. He gets into an accident. He can see the future. He shakes the hand of Greg Stillson, and he actually sees his future. And Greg Stillson is present in that future, and he basically sends these nuclear missiles to this country. I don't know what country they're actually with it in war with, whatever. And he's yelling at this one general, and he's saying, you're not the voice of the people. I'm the voice of the people. The people speak through me, and the people want me to do this. And then, so then he basically like Christopher Walken basically changes his mind, says, and then actually goes to his doctor and says, if you knew what Hitler, like Hitler before he became who he was, would you have killed him? And he goes, well, no. Would you have killed him? Would you have killed him as a child? If you knew what he did and all this other stuff. And then, the doctor basically said, yeah, I would have killed him. And I was like, this is basically what's happening. It's like, it's just intimidation. I understand it's intimidation, and it's wrong on every single level. It's wrong on every single level, and it's horrible. I hate looking at the news. I'd rather watch Star Trek instead, like the original Star Trek, because when you watch those episodes, you get what's going on. That's what that's why I try to look at science fiction or I try to look at something other than the news.
Remember the doctor. Remember the Doctor and River Song went back to try to do that too. So, and that didn't work either.
But it and and this is the time we're living in, and I'm like I never thought we'd get to this point where we're living in this time where people are just being grabbed off the street by Gestapo. That's what it seems like to me. They're being grabbed off the street. They're thrown in the vans. They're being roughed up. They're being intimidated. Well, don't do this. Okay, if you want to protect government institutions, that's fine. Okay, protect the institutions. You don't have to protect the institutions by dressing like dressing up, like a stormtrooper and walking down the street, killing everything or shooting at everything that you
right,
see.
well, let's
by the institution.
I almost can't believe I'm saying this, but let's be fair. No one's been killed that I'm aware of.
Well, not killed, but I mean.
But I understand. I understand your greater point. But let's,
Yeah, people have been hit by tear gas cartridges.
Yes.
One guy lost his eye.
Correct. Another gentleman has already had, I think, four reconstructive facial surgeries. Yes.
Right. Being shot by rubber bullets. Now, rubber bullets out of a paintball gun. I played paintball for 20 years. I was an airsmith. Those guns, I don't know if they're regulated, if they regulate the FPS, the air pressure, whatever, but a rubber bullet can kill.
Yes.
In
the right spot. Yes.
No. In the right spot. Yeah.
Right.
But when people are trying to run away, a rubber bullet, to the side of the temple.
Yes.
That's it. You're done. But, it's not. It's not the America I signed up for. It's people go, well, you didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, and I was like, no. I wanted to vote for the person who made more sense. I really didn't vote for Trump because my family knew about the Trumps back in the 80s, and I knew about all the corruption.
If you lived on
about power.
If you lived on
all the other bull, and I didn't, and I knew about that.
If you lived on the eastern half of New Jersey, you knew about it. I'm going to give, I'm going to clear. Thank you, sir. You proved that the phones work. I want to give, I'm going to give I'm going to actually take a risk and give somebody else a shot before I wrap up. But thank you, sir.
Problem. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I just want to give somebody else a shot just in case. Okay. And if I don't get any, then we'll wrap up. But thank you, sir.
No problem. All right.
My dear friend George. And the chime, of course, to tell you that I hung up. But how about George is right? His frustration is not solitary, and here would be a question that I have. And the phone line is again open. 227 oh, that's wrong. My goodness. 267-267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. I saw some new folks come into the Facebook chat. The phone line is open. We are taking calls live right now. 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. I have an interesting question, and I have asked I've asked all the conservatives who follow me on Facebook. I have asked the conservatives, self-identified conservatives, in the two main conservative groups on Facebook who were fair enough, I would like to say, to try to be positive, to try to put a positive spin on it. To let me in, and they even let me post there occasionally, which is surprising. Although usually I end up calling out the hypocrisy of it, but it's interesting. They did let me in, and they do let me post there. I'm waiting with bated breath for the Second Amendment folks who are hoarding weapons to defend themselves and, by extension, all the rest of us, or at least according to their own description, all the rest of us, from a tyrannical government. Well, so far, the only folks who have defended us are moms, dads with leaf blowers, and a lot of military veterans who are under the belief, and I agree with them, that these so-called police in Portland are breaking their oath to the Constitution. I'm still waiting for the Second Amendment, folks. The self-appointed militia, the ones that are in the woods and mountains of Oregon, the ones in the hinterlands of Washington and Idaho and Montana and Wyoming, and the same sort of militia that are on the southern border of Arizona and so on. By the way, there are large sections of the U.S.-Mexico border that have been shut, and border crossings have been denied. Oh, it wasn't the United States that did that, it was Mexico, because COVID cases have spiked so much on those southern border states that the Mexican government no longer wants American citizens crossing the Mexican border. Parts of the Canadian border have been shuttered as well, because they do not want Americans crossing the northern border into Canada. We are no longer allowed to travel into Europe either. I believe, but I am not certain, I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, that New Zealand and Australia are no longer accepting American travelers either. Maybe Mexico will pay for that wall after all. Just a thought. 267-227-9189. I feel bad I ushered George off the air. I was thinking there would be another phone call coming in, but there isn't one. So I am supposed to be on holiday next Sunday. We are not currently scheduled to have a program. I'm supposed to be on holiday with family. There is not currently a program scheduled. We will return on August. Let me look at a calendar. Not well prepared for this part. I am scheduled to return on August 9th, currently. My guest on August 9th is scheduled to be yet one in another series of diversions for the program, new ideas for the program. My friend Robert Smith. Robert is a lifelong Republican and former Republican office holder in the city of Allentown. Robert is also literally my friend. We talk often, largely via Facebook and electronically. We don't speak as much as I would like, but we talk via Facebook, and we always talk exceptionally respectfully, even when we disagree. Our conversations always end with, "We may disagree on this, but so glad to hear from you. Glad you are well." Or sometimes we agree. We happen to agree a great deal with either I understand their point but hate the method with which they are making it. Sometimes that kind of thing. Our discussions are extremely polite and respectful. And I deeply appreciate that of him. And so I've invited him on the program. I guess in the rank of folks that I've had on the program, he might be the most quote unquote regular citizen we've had on the program so far, as he is no longer holding office or anything like that. But he is a registered Republican. He votes Republican. He campaigns for Republicans. But we are blessed, and I do mean blessed, that we have extremely respectful conversation. And I wanted to bring that conversation to you, the listeners and viewers of this program, because this debate has been lost. Now, I think the beginning of the end of debate in this country was, for my money, during the Nixon administration. It began with the Southern Strategy. And we'll get into this with Robert if I'm lucky enough that he's listening now, and I believe he may be. I'm sure he's already taking notes and perhaps even disagreeing with me as I speak. But that strategy was given a great deal of fuel under Reagan. It was put on steroids by Karl Rove during the W. Bush administration. It was given even more fuel by the Republican Congress. Well, I should say, no, I skipped the Gingrich part of it. Then accelerated even further by Rove, the Frank Luntz era under the W. Bush administration. And then, of course, the real, waded into the conspiracy age under the administrations of President Obama, and has led us right to where we are now. And I think that debate is lost. But I'm heartened by the fact that Mr. Smith and I have, in our own small way, rekindled these debates. Because again, even though we don't agree on much, from a policy standpoint, we can talk to each other. And we can talk to each other in an extremely important, respectful way. And I think in a very important way. Because even when we disagree, we part the discussions with, you take care of yourself. You take care of the family. Be healthy. Be safe. Thank you for the conversation. And all is not lost. And it's those kind of debates that we need to have again in this country if we're ever going to get anywhere. If we're ever going to see what's happening in Portland stop. It's those kind of debates that we need to have again. It's those kind of conversations that we need to start having again. So that is what we have planned for August 9th. August 16th, the following Sunday, will be my friend Anthony Downing. We will be discussing all things labor. The state of the labor union movement, the importance of the labor union movement. Where is the labor union movement today? The dismantling and destruction, intentional destruction of the labor union movement by the Reagan administration. When President Reagan entered office, the private sector, the percentage of the private sector labor force that was unionized was roughly 37%, I want to say. I think it was 37%. That is now down to under 6%. And that was done intentionally. And it was done to destroy wages and bring cheap labor to this country, to increase profits for billionaires. And look what it's done to this country. So we'll be discussing that with Anthony. I also want to discuss with him some tough questions. Where do police unions fit into the modern labor movement? Within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where do the Boilermakers fit into the modern labor union movement? A labor union that essentially, in my mind, is wholly owned by the fossil fuel industry. Where do they fit into the modern labor union movement? So we'll talk to Anthony about that on August 16. I have been efforting trying to get Congresswoman Susan Wild on the program, and any number of sitting office holders and congressional candidates as well. I have invitations out to literally like a dozen different folks, and have heard from none. I don't know if the program is, I don't know if we're kicking up too much controversy, or they just schedulers aren't listening, or what, I don't know. But if you have a sitting office holder candidate in your area that you would like to see on the program, contact us, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, because I am sending out letters like they're going out of style, and I'm not getting response. So I thought we were a rather safe place to be. Not safe insofar as the topics that we're covering, because I think we're hitting on a lot of interesting, serious topics. But I think we're respectful. I think we're not throwing mud. We're not calling names. We're not screaming like our hair's on fire. There certainly isn't any conspiracy theory radio here. Certainly not the way the party opposite and the right wing would like to, or is dealing in currently. So I don't know why we're having the difficulties that we're having getting sitting office holders and candidates into the program currently. There's actually one other thing I wanted to get into. I know that there are some, there's not a lot of people in the chat room at the moment, but or on the live feed at the moment, at least at that other side of information. Hopefully there's some others. But for our friends at Hot 101 that are listening right now, there is one other topic that I want to dive into. And if we don't stimulate any phone calls anytime soon during this next topic, we'll say goodnight for this week. But there's something that I would like you to think about. And if you don't, it doesn't stimulate any phone calls, then at least take this thought with you to think about for the week. One of the things that I deal with a lot with the candidates that I work with, and one of the topics, I guess you call it a topic, that I think is a winner. There are certain topics in any campaign that are always a winner. One is corruption. If you have a candidate running for office who is corrupt, or if not actually tried and convicted for corruption, is just dripping with corruption, you know it. You know, they entered office and they were maybe middle class, upper middle class, and they've been in office and now they're just a millionaire, tens of millionaire, drove the family station wagon when they entered office, and now they've got 10 different cars in the mansion, and the whole, you just know they've enriched themselves. And the brother has a job, the brother-in-law has a job, the daughter has a job, you know what I mean? That's a winner. If you're the candidate running against that corrupt candidate, that's a winner. Right? That's a winner. The other one is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a winner. If you are candidate A running against a sitting incumbent candidate, and to be perfectly honest, it works on both sides of the aisle, and you can call out that sitting incumbent's hypocrisy, that's a winner. The sitting incumbent says, I believe in A, but then does B, that's a winner. There is one pressing piece of policy, I guess you would call it, that is coming out of this virus, where hypocrisy is just, you better have your hip waders on when you're going into this deep mud. If you're part of the party opposite me, which would be the Republican Party. I am a Democrat. I've been one since I was born, and I don't hide it. And if you're not one, that's fine. We're Americans. We can talk. But there's a piece of hypocrisy that the Republicans find themselves in that they've not been able to talk about yet, that they've avoided, that they should not be allowed to avoid, and that I've not seen them explain quite yet. I touched on it with James in our 2-hour talk about his book. You've seen the current occupant of the White House and the party opposite talk about how we must reopen the schools and must get our children back into school. But has any party, has anyone been so hesitant or loath to pay for education than the party opposite? Why would they be in such a damn hurry to get these kids back into schools that they don't want to pay for? At the same time saying, and I have seen members of the party opposite also say, wow, these kids who all did all this distance learning and learning at home through the internet, we don't need these schools. We don't need all these teachers. We certainly don't need these teachers' unions, because we know the Republican Party hates unions. Why don't we just have all the kids learn from home all the time going forward? So which is it? Either way, you are drowning in hypocrisy. Do you want all these kids to go back to school? Because if you do, then you better pay for it. Well, if you've decided that, wow, all these kids do great when they learn from home, are you going to provide all of these kids with the technology they need to learn from home? Because you're going to have to pay for that then. Are you going to provide the parents with the technology they need to work from home? Will you require their employers to do it? If you're going to require the employees, will you give them a tax credit or write-off for the technology they need? Cannot have both. That's called hypocrisy. And it's something they should be called out for. It's one or the other, although there are plenty of schools who are looking at a hybrid program, and that's cool too. So which is it? All the kids should be back in school. Fine. Some of the guidelines that I have seen have shown you should have no more than 15 kids in a class so that they can be distanced. And oh, by the way, couple $100,000 worth of adjustments, modifications, upgrades, et cetera, to the HVAC systems, filters, and so on. Who's paying for all that? Well, we already know the party opposite, the right wing, the Republican Party, doesn't want to pay for schools, period. So they sure as hell aren't going to pay for any of that. Well, which is it? Do you want them back in school or don't you? Because you can't send them back with nothing. Okay, let's send them all back with nothing. Then they all get sick and end up in hospital. Well, then we can't pay for that either. Because we certainly can't have health care. We're in the courts trying to strip them all of that. It's all hypocrisy. And it's a winner. It's a winner for any Democratic candidate anywhere in the Commonwealth. There's your free bit of advice for this week. Democratic candidates anywhere in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the country for that matter. You want to shove the kids back in school, then pay for the modifications for the buildings. You don't want to pay for the modifications in the buildings? Fine, we'll learn from home. Give the kids what they need to learn from home. You don't want to pay for that either. Which is it? You're not getting out of this with nothing. It's going to cost something one way or another. Face it. Shove them all back into school without any of the modifications. 30 kids in a classroom with an underpaid teacher. Everyone gets sick. They all end up in the healthcare system. Well, we won't pay for that either. No, somebody's going to pay somewhere along the line. That's just the truth of it. We're better than this. We're a better country than this. For anyone watching or listening who happens to be a self-identified Republican who doesn't agree with a single thing I'm saying, fine. Let's talk about it. But the hypocrisy of the situation is inescapable. And if you are not part of the economic top 1%, you shouldn't even be a Republican. You have no economic reason for it whatsoever. No economic justification for it whatsoever. You are not a temporarily inconvenienced billionaire. We're a better country than this. We're a better country than this. Well, as we would do at the end of a meeting under Robert's rules, if anyone has any last comments or questions, seeing none, we will make a motion to adjourn. 8:20 is a bit of an odd time to adjourn, but I see no incoming phone calls. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Final last thoughts. I strongly encourage you to buy James Holley's book, The Black Handbook for Corporate White America, The Real Corporate Journey of a Black Leader. James, I don't actually just say that because he was on the program, but because he's a good guy. He's a good man. He's a good and decent man. Not just because he was my guest, but because he was a good man. If you don't, well, is a good man. I shouldn't say was, like he's not with us anymore, but he's a good man. If you couldn't get the sense from that interview that this is just a good, deep down, decent human being, I don't know. I mean, he's just a good man. It's a good book. It's an educational book. It's a true, real story. I deeply encourage you to pick up his book. It is available on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, or anywhere that you would normally purchase a book. Please, I encourage you to pick it up. And I deeply, deeply thank James for being with me tonight. I was really thrilled to have an author on the program. It just speaks to the continued growth and development of the program, and I'm thrilled about it. I want to again thank my last two guests, actually. Shavanya Corbin-Johnson, what a rock star. Cannot wait till she can come back and visit us again. And Cole Goodman, who continues to be out there all this week, working a full-time job and demonstrating and continue to bring voice to the voiceless. A really good man. I just said Goodman. I just said, he's going to get a kick out of that when he hears this. But a really decent quality human being, and Shivanya, just a great friend, and I'm thrilled that she was here. So again, for the next 3 weeks, the current schedule is that I will not be here next week. We are supposed to be on holiday, but there are I have to get a COVID test. There's quarantine rules from PA into Rhode Island, and just if I'm going to be here, I will release keep your eye on Facebook. If I'm going to be here, I will probably bother Connor O'Hanlon, and then we'll be here, and we'll take calls, or hope to take calls for the whole show. And then August 9th is Robert Smith Jr., and the 16th is Anthony Downing. That's how it currently stands. So until keep an eye on Facebook for any show announcement if we are going to be here on the 2nd, but currently we are not. So for the next 2 weeks, I will say goodbye for now and beg you all, with deep respect, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, we are all part of this community. Whether you vote or not, whether you are on the left or the right, white, black, Asian, Native American, whatever you are, dog, cat, bird, if you are breathing, if you are alive, if you are part of this planetary structure, if you are conscious and sentient, take care of each other. You count, you matter, take care of each other. Be good to one another. Be nice to one another. Take a deep breath and be nice to one another. No matter how stressful your day is, no matter how bad it might be going, no matter how sick you may be, there is probably something out there that's worse. And, it's getting bad here, I can tell you. The money's running out. And I don't know what's coming. But I'm trying to hang in there. You do the same. Be careful. Look out for one another. We can get through this. It's an ugly time. There are folks who are trying to make it even uglier. Don't let them. Stick together. We can do this. I know that it was, I got to do that kind of math, 140-ish years ago. If we got through a civil war and 2 world wars, we can get through this. We just need to look out for one another. We can do this. Stop, take a breath, and watch out for your neighbor. We'll get through this. All the differences that we may have, and those differences are some of them are ugly. Some of them are downright ugly. But we can do this. We can. So until next time, I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed the program. I hope you continue to enjoy the program wherever it is that you take it in. Whatever Facebook platform that you are on, please remember to visit our homepage for news, continuing current event items, as well as science, sociology items, current events, that other side of information on Facebook. To the hot101.net family, thank you for allowing me to be part of your day and part of your week. We shall return. You can always listen to hot101.net on the main website at hot101.net. You can get the hot101.net app at the Apple Store, the App Store on Apple, and the Google Play Store if you have an Android device. You can also listen to hot101.net through the TuneIn Radio app. If you would like to advertise on The Kennedy Effect, you can email us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. My sincere thanks to my guest again, James Holley. The book is That Black Handbook for Corporate White America. My thanks to DJ Lexus and DJ Earl from hot101.net, and my partner, friend, shaman, psychiatrist, every good thing you could possibly heap on to the term, for April Riddick. So I am Jeff Kennedy. Thank you for being here. I shall say goodnight for now, and we will see you again down the road. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye now.